So Dan is in the background and eating some licorice that he brought from the Netherlands to Denmark in the battle of the licorice giants. He dared to bring. Oh, cool!
Yeah,
stream is live.
So now I still speak, right, without it being broadcasted into YouTube.
Yes.
So it's just a TV, it's still live from here. When I posted this building bridges, someone
journey across Europe. We're going to be meeting politicians. We're going to be meeting political candidates who are part of the Volt movement, a movement which is pan-European movement, which is committed to creating a more inclusive Europe. More inclusive for the LGBTIQ plus community, but of course, more inclusive for everybody. And this is what this event is all about. I'm really excited to be having this opportunity to moderate the session and also to have you be part of it, to have you be part of this journey where we're going to be exploring what is the state of play with regards to LGBTIAQ plus rights across Europe, but also what are the challenges and what are the opportunities and what is the role that a political movement like Volt, which is trying to make a better Europe, what is our role? What can we do? What can we make happen so that we all feel more safe and more included in this place we call home, Europe? I'm also really excited about the program that our fellow organizers have put together. We're going to have panel debates. We're going to have presentations from across Europe, which are going to enable us to get a sense of where things are at, whether you're in Southern Europe or Northern Europe, in Central Europe, in Eastern Europe, it doesn't matter where, we're going to have a good sense of what are the things happening. And we're also going to have potentially a live session coming from Bucharest. I'm really excited by that. Hopefully the technical requirements will make it possible for us to make that connection. It'll be an exciting moment. But of course, Pride isn't a Pride without also a bit of fun. So I'm also really excited we're going to have a bit of a musical interlude in between these wonderful political debates, these wonderful political conversations. It's going to be an exciting journey. I hope you will enjoy it. If you have any comments or any questions, don't hesitate to put your comments and questions in the comment box. We're monitoring them. We want you to be part of the conversation. So do interact, do intervene, share your thoughts, share your opinions. If you don't agree, be proud, disagree. If you agree, be proud, just agree. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to our first speaker, who's going to give us a sense of what this is all about. And remember, this is about building bridges. This is the theme of the event. And I'm really excited that we chose this theme because what is Pride without us building bridges across Europe, across minds, in order to change this Europe that we call home? So allow me to give the floor and get us straight into this. Connie, it's great to have you here. Connie is one of the persons who's behind and is the mastermind of this event. So it's really great that we're going to have her opening the session and giving us the rhythm of this Volt Pride event. Welcome, Connie, and the floor is yours with a lot of pride.
Thank you so much, Kim. That was a wonderful introduction. I will give you a little bit of an opening statement now, as Kim said, to create the situation that we want to discuss then in the following panel discussion with our friends from across Europe. If you look at Europe from the outside, it looks like a safe haven for queer people from around the world. Within our borders, we are seemingly able to live our lives, love who we choose to love, identify as ourselves, and be regarded as full members of society. Migrants who identify as queer seek refuge in our borders because they expect that they will be accepted and their experiences will be heard, their stories shared. Across our continent, people of all colors and backgrounds are coming together as communities, celebrating their queer experiences, talk about loved ones and lost ones. They share their minds, how to use a binder, how to pick your first bra, how to come out to your parents, which pronouns to use, how to kiss a girl, how consent works, and how to tell if he likes you. In the experiences of queer refugees, fleeing civil wars, persecution, poverty, and the very real effects of climate change, Europe is describing a vision of place where life gets better, where acceptance is possible. We who already live here may forget this promise, that it is precious, if not unique. Europe is not the first place to accept LGBTIAQ plus people. As a matter of fact, our heritage as colonizers reshaped whole continents to our liking, replaced existing beautiful expressions of identity and sexuality that we are now slowly able to rediscover and appreciate properly. Instead, our imperial legacy dictated a new normal for gender and sexuality to conform to our narrow-minded ideals. But we can face that legacy, we can teach it to those who come after us, and we can appreciate how far we've come. But there's still a lot for us to do. Even in those member countries of the EU who are praised as the most liberal and open-minded, discrimination is a near daily occurrence. While diversity is a hot topic, our real-life representation is still abysmal. Visibility is an act of bravery, and equality is a long shot. Some members of our union are warming to LGBTIQ+ people and the issues that they bring with them. Yet other members disregard these completely and are striving for a nationalistic or prudish worldview that is further skewed by a narrow definition of faith. We may have rainbow-colored brands shout out a pink-washed version of slogans originating at Stonewall, but they make us forget that Stonewall was a riot. And while even conservative parties have queer representation, real change can't wait for slow progress. We need to stop being deemed exotic and fetishized for the viewing pleasure of heteronormativity. We need to live our lives right now in equality in Europe, especially in this year of pandemic, distanced but together. Of course, we'll survive this. We'll survive this too, as we have encountered pandemics before us. HIV, for example, is still a threat to our community, and besides medication, we can only cure it with equal measures of care. But we can accomplish this as a community with a shared vision. And for that, we need you. We need you, the queer woman of color whose voice is drowned out by 1,000 men with the urge to explain. We need you, the young trans guy who is afraid to ask out the boy from school because he's been bullied into believing they're not worthy of love. We need you, the non-binary person who is frequently misgendered because people just can't seem to remember their name and pronouns. We need your voices, and we need your voices in our movements and in our parliaments. We need your thoughts, and we need you, because we can't make that vision of a united Europe a possibility if we don't acknowledge our worries and needs, and your worries and needs. That is why we need to stand up to bullies, be they in the schoolyard or in parliament. And that is because you matter and you need to be heard. We need to fix what is wrong in Europe, make sure that discrimination against anyone, but especially against LGBTIQ+ people, is being fought with all our might. Pride is a party, but Pride is also political. And yes, if we can come together as a community with all the amazing people that identify with us, it will be with pride that we look at what we've accomplished, what the queer, asexual, trans, or gender non-conforming activists have accomplished before us and have done to bring us to this very point, and yet identify the next steps that we need to take together, that we need to share the warmth of our community with even more people, wherever they come from, in a Europe of equal opportunities and with a real chance at acceptance. Our vision of Europe encompasses all genders, all sexualities, and all identities. 2021 is a year of upheaval and change, and our coming battles are only growing with time. The vision of Europe that we share with those coming to our shores in hope is something we strongly feel about. We hope this Pride event is the occasion to talk about our shared vision and the issues that we are dealing with and the ways that we can bring about change. Let us, as Kim so lovely said, build bridges to cross our divides, keep our minds and borders open, embrace our diversity, and celebrate our accomplishments. And let's talk about what we need to do next. And with that, I would like to open the panel discussion. We have on our panel Marieke Koekkoek, who is coming to us from the Tweede Kamer in the Netherlands. She's also a Volt member. We will have Matt Beard, who is from All Out UK. Then we will have Luis Cano, who is coming to us from Hungary, and he's an activist, and he's also a member of the ALDE party. And we have Elder Bértolo, who is coming to us from Portugal, and who's the president of Opus Diversidades, but I'm pretty sure I pronounced that incorrectly. So let us welcome the members of our panel on this stream. I can already see Matt. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here.
Very cool. There you are. And Luis. Yes, everybody's there. Very, very cool. Very quickly, I already called out your names, but I would love for you to introduce yourselves once more, and also maybe with your full name and your preferred pronouns. Let's get it started with Luis, and then go to Marieke, and then Elder, and then Matt.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Courtney. Thank you very much for the invitation and also for the organization. I think it's a great opportunity. Hi, everyone. My name is Luis Cano. I am from Budapest, Hungary, right now in Krakow, Poland, also because here is Pride. Basically, I'm a political consultant. I work for Momentum Mozgalom in Hungary and also for Women Political Leaders, which is a network of women political elected women globally. Basically, I think that during this pandemic has been actually good to know that, we continue connected online, but then also that, we have a wider event, not only with the small audience, but then also like a wider reach. So I'm very, very happy that we had this opportunity.
Thank you.
So, hi everyone, my name is Marieke Koekkoek. I live in the Netherlands, in Utrecht, and I'm a member of Volt, and since March I've been elected as a member of parliament here in the Netherlands on behalf of Volt.
Very nice to have you. I think Elder, it was you next.
Yep. Hi. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting inviting Opus. And I'm the president of Opus Diversidades, formerly known as Opus Gay, one of the oldest LGBTQI associations in Portugal. We manage a shelter house for LGBT people, and we also work with refugees, migrants, senior people, trans people, and so we do a lot of outreach. So it's a pleasure to be here and share some thoughts with you.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Matt.
Hi, everybody. Great to be with you this afternoon. My name is Matt Beard. My pronouns are he, him. I am the executive director at All Out, which is a global movement for love and equality, campaigning for LGBT plus human rights around the world.
Thank you so much. All right, I think without further ado, let us jump in to the very first question, and that is just as an opener in relation to also what I said in the opening statement. What, in your eyes, is the biggest issue that LGBTIAQ plus people are facing today in Europe? Who wants to answer that one the first? Matt, yeah, go ahead.
I'm happy to jump in, but I'd love to hear from others as well. I mean, I've literally just come back from a protest at World Pride here in Copenhagen, outside both the Hungarian and the Polish embassies, where people came together to show their love, their solidarity, and their defiance at those particular laws. And I know we're going to talk about those in more detail later, but I do think that like the biggest issue facing LGBTQ plus people at the moment in Europe is the fact that we are being used as pawns in a proxy war, in a culture war. It is actually terrifying, the extent to which this is now happening, where populist leaders are successfully able to scapegoat LGBT plus people, use them as weapons in a wider culture war, use them as weapons to retain or gain power. And I think it's incredibly important that the imperative is on all of us to ensure that we deliver positive narratives about LGBT plus lives, to ensure that citizens across Europe, in all parts of Europe, recognize that LGBT plus people are your neighbors, your kids' teachers, the people you worship with, people you work with. We really need to kind of fully deconstruct the idea of an LGBT ideology that's taking over Europe, or the notion of a gender ideology that has some kind of sinister role in terms of putting its tentacles through European life. So yeah, that would be my opener, but I'd love to hear from others.
Definitely. I would probably move on to Luis really quickly, because he is from Hungary and probably also, and also in Poland. So that would be very interesting to hear your point.
Thank you. I have to agree fully with Mag, mainly because also, you know, like the action that Matt was talking about of All Out was a global action, and we were also a few hours ago in the consulate here in Hungary making a protest. And then it's really great to see European solidarity and action. I think that I have to agree fully, because I do see a problem of lacking political philosophy in the political speeches across Hungary, and then that actually translating in just using the LGBT community as a scapegoat, and then not having any respect or any disregarding completely human dignity. So this is actually an issue that we're facing, just being used as tools of propaganda. We are actually facing the fact that, you know, also the populist rhetoric is using our own language also against us, which is interesting, because then they're also transforming this conversation as we are the ones who are protecting children. We are the ones who are protecting the families. And then this is a very dangerous perspective, because it's just a lacking of political ideology. It's just pure ambition for power, and then disregarding of our identity, and then actually our respect for our rights. So that makes us wonder, you know, is it an LGBT issue, even because it's a human rights issue? At the end of the day, you know, like we are the enemy today. Tomorrow it can be anyone. It has been proven. So, you know, I think that democracies are fragile, and this is actually something that is being problematic. But then I also want to add a little bit here on the lacking of many role models for LGBT community in politics specifically, and the lack of representation. I do think that we need to have more voices, and I embrace completely allies that raise the voices for LGBT issues in the parliament, in the European Parliament. But I do think that we need to also have more fighters in the front line that are representative of our communities. We need more transgender rights, talking about transgender issues. We need more, and even like within our community, it should not be only us gay men leading the conversation. It's a community itself, and it has to be diverse, and it has to show diversity in the voices of representation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Luis. First of all, it's great that you mentioned that. Also, like when we planned this event, we were trying to make sure that we have as much diversity within the community as possible. Unfortunately, that is not always what can be accomplished. But I think it's a very important topic, and also something that we're striving for, if not always accomplishing to the extent that we want to. Before we go back on this very interesting topic about also the homophobic laws that we might face within Europe, I would want to also hear from Marieke and Eder. So Marieke, could you also quickly maybe give us an insight into what you think are one of the biggest issues that LGBTIAQ plus people face in Europe?
Yeah, I think I would completely agree with what was said earlier, especially about being used in basically a proxy war for power, and also against democracy. I think that is sometimes even like a bit of a red herring that's being cast into what is sort of an attack on democracy in Europe. And that this is a human rights issue, and that it should not, and therefore, and I think that's coming back to what is the biggest threat, is that we compartmentalize this too much, that we would overly see this as one specific group of people, one community being harassed. And I think we need to make this what it is, namely an attack on democracy in itself in Europe. That I think requires the basically polarized debate to come back together, to seek more connection, to see more solidarity among groups within the community, but also outside, and to open up this the story that's being told, basically. And that is maybe something that is in addition to what was said earlier, because it concerns all Europeans and not just a few countries or not just a few communities. This is all of Europe.
Very true indeed. Thank you. Elder.
Yeah, well, I hope we can go back to the anti-LGBTQ plus wave of laws that we are witnessing in Europe. But very quickly, besides that, I think there's a lot of lack of visibility for intersex people. So people do not know, they are not aware, and this is a very important issue. Another thing is the heteronormativity that we want to impose upon trans people. Like a trans male and a trans female have to look like a cis male and a cis female. We have to destroy this idea. And the last thing is mental health support. We know that the community is suffering a lot from mental issues, mostly regarding to all the problems, all the aggressions, all the lack of family support sometimes. And it is a poor parent of the health systems across Europe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Also, by the way, I just want to introduce you that Elder just added he, him as his pronouns, and I totally forgot to say that for myself. I tried to make that a thing, and it wasn't a thing for myself apparently. So I use she and her. Very cool. Okay. So let's also see the flip side. What do you think are some of the considerable improvements that we've seen, especially in the last 10 years? I would say, Elder, would you want to add to that?
Yeah, but well, I feel lucky because Portugal has been moving forward pretty quickly regarding many laws protecting the rights of LGBTQI plus people. So we got marriage, we got adoption and co-adoption. In 2018, we got the law defending self-determination, gender self-determination, and also the protection of sexual characteristics in intersex people. So we are moving. We have some draft laws nowadays in Parliament for banning conversion therapies. So we have been changing, but sometimes laws are not enough, and you need training, information, education, raising awareness, so that the whole society can get along with that laws that are pretty progressive, but they are not enough.
Thank you so much. I don't know, Marieke, did you also want to join and let us know what you think are some of the improvements that we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, maybe?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest improvement is that the EU and the different member states and on all levels of government, I think, have become more outspoken. I mean, I know we have a number of countries that have been doing the opposite, but at least the European Commission, for example, has become way more outspoken in standing for LGBT plus rights and also speaking out more, I think, in a higher tone, at least, than previously. And I think that's a good thing. That's improvement, and it also shows that when there are certain values at stake, that we choose a side. And I think that is something that's sort of the minimal that a government has to do. And of course, the European Commission is important for European unity, I think, at least in my eyes. So I think that's a big step, and that's also probably what's causing more friction. So in that sense, and this sounds maybe a bit weird, but the friction in itself is good, because it means that there's more visibility, there's more people that are willing to speak out and to not be invisible. So the fact that there is a bit of a clash is, in my eyes, also, you can see the positive side to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I very much agree with that. Cool. I also wanted to give the opportunity for Luis and Matt to join in if you want to add something there. Who wants to go first? Oh, Matt, apparently. Cool. Very nice.
Sure, I can go. Yeah, I mean, I very much agree with Marieke around the European Union level. To have seen the infringement procedures now taken against Hungary and Poland is extremely reassuring. Those words, of course, need to be turned into action now, but to see the Commission President talking about LGBT-free zones as humanity-free zones, to see the Parliament declaring LGBT freedom zones, all of those things just feel very positive to where we were maybe 10 years ago. I also think what's really positive, to build on Helga's point, is this distinction between hearts and minds and laws. And I would argue that the hearts and minds are moving. That the people who want to hurt us and violate us are behaving in such a desperate and crazy way because they know they're losing. They know that there is a new generation growing up that doesn't accept this kind of intolerance and hatred. And just today, Vicky from Budapest Pride, when she gave her speech at the Copenhagen demonstration, just read out some statistics, and I don't remember the actual numbers, but from a recent opinion poll in Hungary that showed that actually a vast majority of Hungarians don't believe that LGBT people, for example, pose a threat to children. So I do think we're on this long and bumpy road to equality and freedom for everybody. There are some big bumps in the road, but we are certainly driving in the right direction.
Wonderful. That is really nice. All right, Luis. I don't know if we have him right now. Would give him a one moment to reconnect, but I can't see him. If that's not possible, that's not a big deal. He'll come back, I'm pretty sure. In the meantime, I would then just move on because we have a whole slew of different questions that we wanted to tackle, and we have such a wonderful cast of people here that I really wanted to use the opportunity. We already touched on the topic of homophobic laws, and we have heard that there are a number of places where so-called anti-gay laws are proliferating. How do you see? How much do you see this as a trend, and why do you think that it proliferates in the countries where it proliferates the most? And if you read the news in places like, for example, I'm from Berlin, Germany, you always seem to hear about Poland and Hungary for some reason, that there are these anti-gay laws, etc. And do you think that it's something that is specific to these countries, or is it something that can happen anywhere? I see Elder shaking, nodding. So I would say, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Connie. Well, I don't think it is a trend, not at all. I think it is something really stronger that is spreading, and that is spreading not only in Hungary and Poland and Slovenia, but we are seeing populist and extreme right parties rising all across Europe. 2 years ago, people said here in Portugal that it was impossible to have an extreme right party. Now we have a parliament representative, and they are growing. And what I think is then someone mentioned that, I think it was Matt, that in times of crisis, scapegoats are needed, and history keeps repeating itself. And we had a huge crisis, and now it is good to find a scapegoat. And LGBTQI plus people are really a great target, because they tend to mass with values, conservative values, and so those parties can point the finger and say they are ruining family values. They are, like, don't mess with the children, leave our children alone. And even people who are not that ideology oriented can adopt that speech. So what I believe is that silence is accomplished. So we cannot be silent. We have to report, condemn, and keep on pointing how wrong they are.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Luis, I see that you're back, which is really, really cool. Yeah, we've all been there. We've all been in situations where just drop out of a meeting, but it's really good to have you back. We're just currently talking about the topic of so-called homophobic or anti-gay laws, and why you think they're proliferating, and especially why you think they're proliferating where they are seemingly proliferating. Which is, if you read media, for example, in Germany, it seems to be happening in Poland and Hungary, and as we just heard, it's of course not something that just happens there. What is your opinion on that?
So yesterday, actually, I had the opportunity to be with a colleague, actually from All Out, and then we were talking about and exposed to the rainbow map that ILGA does every year, and then it shows the evolution of anti-LGBT legislation and situation of LGBT rights across Europe, and then we were seeing the decadence and then actually like the aggravation of more and more anti-LGBT laws, or actually more restrictive situations all across Europe. And I think that one of the things of the proliferation, it actually started being visible with the rise of right-wing parties or populist parties across Europe since 2015. And one thing is also even in Sweden, you see, like this proliferation of anti-LGBT rhetoric, which is very preoccupying, because it's also it's a question of how political actors are disregarding the human dignity. And then it's what I was also talking about, it's using an element of distraction. Using the example of Hungary, the last 3 modifications to the law here in Hungary have been actually a topic for distraction. The government, every time that sees themselves in a corner, because they see a lot of pressure on anti-corruption, because they see a lot of pressure on some scandal that they're facing, then they drop this immediately, and then they say, oh, well, I mean, let's shift the conversation. It's about LGBT rights. And then, unfortunately, we do fall into the narrative, because actually it's our nature to react to that, and it's our duty also to react to that. Yet it's very worrying that actually it is this question of how comfortable the government right now is to not to distract the topic always with something that is restrictive with the LGBT community, and then that is also something that we need to consider all across Europe. I say I agree with Marieke. This is not a problem of Hungary. This is not a problem of Poland. But then it's also like a question of let's talk about also pro-LGBT legislation that is being drafted, but it's not even applied in practice. And then if we talk about the Balkans, for example, and we see the case of Montenegro, of course, they want to have accession to the European Union. And we see actually that their index of pro-LGBT legislation has raised up very good, but in practice is actually not applicable. So this is actually very, very worrying, because I think that we need to be looking at the factors of not only what is being said, but also what is actually executed in practice, and then how rights are being granted in the ground.
Yeah, very much. Thank you. You're referring to the marriage equality in Montenegro, right? Yeah, I think that just happened some weeks ago or something that was passed. I would move over to Marieke now to also give her a chance and also add something to that topic with how do you think people from across Europe can maybe help people in countries who are in that very moment or in that very month affected by laws, and what are things that you can do if you're not in the country, basically?
That's always a tough one, of course, because if you're not there, then it's always difficult to extend a helping hand. But I think what is very important is to make it your own problem, in the sense that so if there's a law being passed in Hungary or in Slovenia or wherever, that you see the urgency, you feel the urgency here. So for example, from the Netherlands, we've spoken in Parliament about the laws being adopted in Hungary because we wanted to show everybody this is our problem. This is not a compartmentalized problem far away in the east of Europe. This is when there's an attack on democracy, on the law of the rule of law, then that's an attack here as well. So to activate people, to activate governments. And I think what is also important is to show that there's no isolation. So that, of course, governments and people are not the same. So, and we can do a lot more for people by reaching out through, I don't know, social media, or by making sure that people can be safe, or maybe that people can study in a safe environment, all these things that we can do. And in a sense, we've learned through COVID that there are many means to make sure that you show that people are not alone and not lonely. Because I think that's the hardest feeling, that you feel that you're isolated and that there's no one that can help you, even by just some kind words. So that's, I think, two things that we have to do when you're not in that country.
Thank you very much. Elder, I saw that you wanted to add something really quickly that you forgot to mention.
Regarding this, I have many times discussions with people from the community who say that we do not need marches and pride and any longer because the rights are there. Rights are not acquired. Rights can be missed. And the example of Hungary was one of the most progressive countries regarding LGBT rights. And now let's just see how we are. So we cannot stop fighting. That's a danger.
Yeah. Matt, I know that you've probably been wanting to say something for a long time now, but yeah, I would love to hear your side.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, you know, why there is this proliferation of discriminatory laws and what people can do. I mean, I think other speakers have covered it really well in terms of the reasons for that. So I'm not going to go into that because there's a risk of repeating, but I think in terms of what people can do, you know, I lead an organization that is based on the very notion of international solidarity. And I believe it's incredibly powerful. I believe that when lots of small voices come together, that makes a very, very loud noise. And we have to kind of recognize that today with certain countries within the European Union, we are looking at effectively pre-fascism. And if now isn't the time to speak up, then when? And if it's not us, then who? Right? And I think we need to be telling the likes of the Polish and Hungarian government that we as a European LGBT+ movement are strong, united, determined, and we need to be pretty fierce in the way that we talk about this. This is not a gentle conversation. We need to make it clear that we will never go back in the closet. We will love who we want to love, and we will be who we want to be. And so I'm very much in favor of a robust communications narrative when we're facing effectively pre-fascist governments.
Yeah, that very much resonates with me as well. Our next topic is somewhat related. I think that we have a lot of the times when we hear the rhetoric that's coming that is that's homophobic, transphobic, etc. A lot of the times it seems to be coming from a background of organized religion. But then again, we do have queer people in all shades also being possibly religious. So how do you think it is possible to, on the one hand, understand what's happening with some conservative voices that are clinging to certain views on religion and basically mandating from that point of view to also have people of faith within our movement that we sometimes are like in a very weird situation, on the one hand being a person of faith and then also being LGBT yeah, well, what is your thought on that? Matt, let's start with you.
Yeah, you know, I should probably out myself by first of all saying that I'm not a person of faith. And so, you know, I think it's incumbent on people like me to find the empathy to understand the importance of faith to so many people across our continent. I want to underline my passionate belief as a non-believer in freedom of religion and the freedom of people to practice their religion if and how they want to. And we've also got to recognize that there is sometimes a tension between rights. People often say that human rights are not a pie, but sometimes they actually are a pie. And taking away a slice of someone's pie means that someone else doesn't get their human rights. So, and that's often the case with religion. I think it's clear to see that the influence of religion in terms of the current challenges we're facing, particularly in Poland. Just a year ago, the Archbishop of Krakow described LGBT plus people as a rainbow plague. I mean, this is language reminiscent of 1930s Germany. And that kind of religious rhetoric needs to be challenged. It needs to be challenged in a way that's respectful of people's belief systems, but it doesn't deserve any special status.
Yeah. Elder, I also wanted to pose the question to you because you've been working like giving shelter to LGBTIQ plus people, and that is usually something that we see happening from maybe, for example, Christian institutions. What is your view on that, and how do you give people who are queer the chance to move on, to become themselves, essentially, but also how do you marry that sort of with a maybe Catholic background?
So I think we have two problems here. I really feel very empathetic with people who are LGBT and religious, because they suffer double aggression, double discrimination. So they are discriminated by their religion, mostly by some ministers, some hierarchy. And at the same time, most of them are rejected by the community, saying that how can you be Catholic or how can you be Muslim if they say this and that about us, if they condemn us to the fire. So, and this is not fair. At least we as a community, we should be empathetic with them, embrace them, and say, okay, you cannot replace your faith. You cannot analyze it, rationalize it. So you are not welcome there, but we welcome you, and we are not. Otherwise, there will be between the sword and the wall. So this is one of the main issues. On the other hand, it is true that the Archbishop of Krakow said that, but it is also true that the Episcopal Conference in Germany said that if they can bless weapons and ships, they can very well bless same-sex relationships. So I think we are in a movement in the church where there's a way, and we can influence that way. And there are lots of LGBT movements inside the church that can help lead the way, and they need our support. Regarding the sheltering, there are some good examples of social security shelters, but then inside, people suffer from homo and transphobia. And it's not up to the managers, it's from the other users. There's a lack of education, there's a lack of training, there's a lack of awareness and regarding what it is to be trans, what it is to be gay, how should one behave. And that's why, unfortunately, there's still a need to shelters directed to LGBT people, because otherwise they become homeless because they are expelled from home, for instance, and then they are again aggressed in the shelters. And then we have to change this paradigm.
Very much so. Unless Luis and Marieke also want to add something, I would move on to our next topic, which is somewhat related. Just a while ago, I watched a very interesting and harrowing documentary about so-called conversion therapy, which was a documentary in the US, but I think you're also aware that this happens just as well in Europe. What do you think is the reason why people still end up there in conversion therapy? And as I'm aware, I think in Europe is the only country in the EU that has completely banned conversion therapy, but so far is one of the few ones where this is banned completely. So why do you think that not more countries are banning it, and why is it still a thing? Who wants to go first? Marieke, maybe? Oh no, okay, Luis, yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that also I can connect a little bit with the topic before, because I think that one thing that maybe I'm not going to paint the more positive point of actually freedom of religion picture, just because of from a strategic political point of view, one has to understand also, you know, the obstacle and then their resources. So I think that one thing that we need to look at is actually the organization and the financial power that many times actually religious groups can build up, and then also on commitments and influences, which is actually an interesting thing. Because here in Hungary, in Poland, the Council of Families, which is a heavily funded organization by religion groups, and it's actually very, very good making commitments on policy with policy makers, and then trying to actually create policy that translates or like cannot, for example, ban conversion therapy, or for example, that trumps on the right. There is a question there on very, very smart organization on their side, and very, very well organized financial power that we need to understand and we need to tackle as well, because we cannot be just only naive to think that, you know, this is only a question of ideology. This is a question of very good lobbying on their side, very good manipulation, especially here in Poland. Is very visible how it's not only a symbolic and political view of their power, it's actually a thing that, you know, they go and lobby in the offices of the MPs. They know how to actually get to the people, because they know how they can influence policy making, and it still is the same in many countries. And then I think that, for example, that influences a lot on conversion therapy, you know, banning, because I think that there is a lot of power there on lobbying that is on control, and that is not being, you know, it's everything behind the scenes.
Marieke, yes.
Yeah, so this, I agree with that there's probably too high of the lobby to keep that is too big. And I think one of the issues there is also that it's made into an individual problem again, and there's nothing more vulnerable than an individual that feels isolated. So if you as a person are struggling, and there's somebody who says, well, I can help you with that struggle, and that someone has a stronger voice than everybody else around you, then it also becomes easy for a politician or for a lobbyist to sort of reason or rationale this kind of abuse, because to me it's abuse. So that is, I think, part of the core of the problem that you need to address. Of course, it's also sometimes difficult to enforce a law. For example, if you ban that, how will you eventually find this kind of therapy settings, or how will you punish people who actually do that? But those are practical issues, I think, that we can always figure out. And I think the core of the issue is that to make this not an individual issue, or to make it a problem of maybe religious communities, but to again see it as something that concerns all of us, and to maybe also make visible what's the lobby behind it. So why can't we, so as Luis was addressing earlier, that when there's lobbyists, you need to at least see who's lobbying for that, and why, who they are reaching mainly, so that you can have the people who hold up this kind of abuse accountable. I think that is how we can overcome, I hope at least.
Very true. Matt?
Yeah, I agree with everything Marieke just said. And just one thing to build on that, I think, in terms of our counter narrative, is that, yes, we need to hold perpetrators to account. But here's the thing. It's not a really difficult story for us to tell that this is incredibly damaging, that this is abuse. every single reputable psychological institution in the world has clearly stated that not only does it not work, I mean, the idea of conversion therapy always should be in inverted commas, because it doesn't work. So not only does it not work, but it's also incredibly damaging to people who are put through it. And there's no debate about that. You might as well say the earth's flat if you're going to suggest that so-called conversion therapy is helpful to individuals. So we need to get better at that narrative, at telling the story that these are abusers, people who are perpetuating this so-called therapy.
Maybe touching on that in a similar vein, we have seen that there are some countries that have now introduced, I think Germany was, it was in 2018, the acceptance of a legal third gender. And I think that the Netherlands followed suit as well. So there is some legislation that is also just very positively influencing the life of LGBTIQ plus people. Maybe Marieke, if you could quickly give us an idea of how we can make it easier for non-binary people to be accepted and have less legal hurdles to jump over in order to be fully accepted in society and yeah, by law.
Yeah, that's a good question in the sense that this seems again like a legal issue, but I always think, well, laws, they are written, they can be rewritten, that really cannot be the issue. So I think that is again a matter of visibility, but also a matter of political will, because this is where you just have to redraft certain laws and not just laws that concern passports for what you write in official documents, but everything that is connected to that. And that to create political will, I think you have to have politicians that speak up, and you have to have education. So what would be a good thing in my eyes is that we use media, for example, to kind of show what the hurdles are. So to make visible again, it's a lot of this is about visibility and about not standing alone. So I think that is where it starts, and then you have to just have sort of the political movement that realizes how, for me, this is a very small issue because it's in the sense of how to change it. That's what I mean. Like, it's very easy to rewrite a law. It's not easy to change hearts of people, and that is where we have to sort of start, and then a politician or a few have to come by and change it. I think that helps.
Yeah, definitely. Luis or Elder?
Yeah, I think that we have the same problem here that we have regarding conversion therapies. We need visibility, representation, role models, education, training, and a lot of awareness raising. So regarding Portugal, it was not a question of recognizing they were wrong, because it was not a disease, so you could not cure something that was not a disease. And then all the colleges of psychology and psychiatry were condemned them. Was a question of thinking that that was enough. But as they kept going, and someone who does not accept him herself, who goes to a therapist to try to change, and then does not manage to do it because it's not good, even feels worse, and that aggravates depression and leads to suicide. So it's really very, very jeopardizing and damaging. So they should be banned. And the same thing according to the third gender. If we begin to speak more about non-binarity, and as you said at the beginning, Connie, we think that non-binarity is some modern, stupid, left-wing thing that someone came up with. Non-binarity has been here for thousands and thousands of years. The greatest civilizations in the world had non-binary people, had 3, 4, 5 different genders. It was European colonizers that, when they arrived, they start condemning that and imposing a heteronormative binary system. So we have to explain that to people. Well, we have to explain that those people have been here and they deserve to be happy. They deserve to be recognized. So I think there's a urgency to put that in law and allow for at least a third gender.
Yeah, Luis.
Yeah, I think that there is also like a tremendous work to do here within the LGBT community itself. I think that one thing that actually we see also is for us, the acceptance to all lift us up and then to actually advance in the cause together. I think that I was telling someone that, here in Hungary, at least, because we're all in the bottom, somehow we push each other all together up and then we're trying to help each other. But in societies that, for example, maybe are a little bit more advanced in legislation, in pro-human rights, you see, for example, in the Nordic states that there's actually people within the community even is not acting together, because there is this misunderstanding of even like with the new flag. Oh, why the flag change? Why is it inclusive? Is it more inclusive? Why do I have to have all these new stripes? So it's actually a lot to consider here, but then this is also a question for us to work within our own communities and then to do the community organizing part of having these conversations first with our activism, with the members of our own community, so they can spread the message. And then the second thing that I think is very important is also to frame this in not in that much of a question of identity politics, because it's not only about non-binary people. This is a question, as Helder was saying, that this is a human rights question. This is in general, is a human rights question, and it's in general thing. It's an integrative message that we need to adopt, because this is not leaving anyone behind.
Thank you very much. Actually, on that note, on a similar note, also of that of acceptance of different ways of living, and I know, Luis, I think that you've worked in that area of especially queer parenthood and the topic of rainbow families. How do you think we as societies can be more forward, more inclusive of LGBTIQ families or families with LGBTIQ members, and yeah, how can we be more embracing of those? And
yeah, I think that those conversations start at home, and it's actually also like a lot of work on community organization. I think that one of the things that we in our political party actually we work a lot is actually on the topic of family rights. As we know, I mean, the new legislation in Hungary prohibits LGBT or any queer family to actually adopt children or even single parents for that matter. And then we see here, for example, in Poland, that we have also advancing legislation right now that has not passed, but that can potentially pass on prohibiting even, for example, or including in the process of adoption, the mandatory question about sexual identity, and then how do you identify yourself? This is actually problematic, because also this is a question for societies to realize that these are conversations that are taboos, and that we need to start having these conversations at home. And then we were having this conversation many times with saying, with activists that said, oh, like we have a couple of activists that are, partners. That happens in politics because we understand each other and we support each other. But then basically someone said, oh, this is the first time that I meet a lesbian couple that is also a family. And then we were saying, no, this is the first time that you meet an out lesbian family couple, just because maybe you didn't know before. But then probably it was your neighbor, probably it was your cousin. So when it comes to actually that is a conversation that we need to start having normalizing, and then to have the conversation with to make it more into a personal story. So we have to start here talking about the personal stories of being the mother, the brother, the friend, the cousin that advances the conversation at home, and that will translate eventually into a broader society dialogue.
Thank you so much. I want to give the other panelists the chance to also add to this. But if not, there are also, I think, about two big topics that I would like to address. But before we do all that, I want to make sure that you know, as audience members, that you can, of course, ask questions to the panelists, and we will address them in the roughly last 15 minutes before the end of the panel. So in about 15 minutes, exactly. So you can, of course, write to us in the YouTube stream. There's on the, I think, right-hand side, there's a chat window where you can ask your questions, but you could, that is probably the easiest way that we can get them. Otherwise, you can also try to tweet them at us with the hashtag Volt Pride 2021. So Matt, Marieke, Elder, did you also want to add to that topic, or should we move on? Matt.
Just real fast, I do think that in terms of LGBT families, rainbow families, at all our work is communication. And one of the things that we found has been incredibly effective is a series that we've done in various countries around the world called Equality Mums, which we widen to Equality Parents, where the mothers or the parents of grown-up LGBT children talk about the love and pride they have for their kids. And this gets really great cut through because you're able to really reach that movable middle, right? Really be able to move hearts and minds by ordinary straight parents talking about the love for their queer kids.
Very true. Thank you. All right, that means, by the way, we already have a couple of questions, and I will address them after we end with the topics that we still have. But before that, I want to talk to you about something that, I don't know if it's a pan-European topic, but I know that a lot of there's been a lot of very beautiful Pride events all throughout Europe. Some of the panelists have been there. We are currently coming to you from the World Pride in Copenhagen, and which is also in a cooperation with Malmö. So it's a combined Pride and the World Pride. So it's very, very nice. And of course, we've seen a number of very beautiful parades and events all throughout Europe in the last couple of days and months. All of that is very pretty, and you see a lot of rainbow flags everywhere. Now, rainbow flags are a wonderful sight to see, but we see them everywhere, and seemingly a lot of corporations are also supporting us by showing their love for LGBT rights. You can see logos drenched in rainbow colors, and they seem to endorse LGBT rights and seem to be supportive. But at the same time, there are activists who call this pinkwashing. Do you think that they have a point? And what do you think about the inclusion or exclusion of companies in Pride events?
Is this for someone in special, or?
No, if you want to go,
yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yes. I think we have been lucky in Portugal because, of course, many associations are totally anti-capitalist, others are not. And so sometimes it's difficult to balance these two opposite opinions on companies and on pink money. But I think we can reach an agreement. And in Portugal, fortunately, we still have the same one march. So it's a pride parade, and we do not have a political march and then a pride parade just with music. And I think this is really necessary. A political event where you can ask for rights that you still do not have, and also celebrate the joy of reaching some other rights. This being said, I don't have personally nothing against companies, but we need to know if that company is raising a rainbow flag in June just to have a gay and LGBT friendly mood, and during the rest of the year they don't employ LGBT people, they mistreat them, and they are supporting parties who write laws against LGBT people somewhere else in the world. So I think that it's not a matter of supporting or not supporting, or receiving or not receiving support from companies. It's a matter of analyzing their social, their LGBT inclusion policies, and then decide, okay, this is they have a very good inclusion model. They support the community, all the whole world. Okay, so they are welcome. If not, now you are not taking advantage of the visibility we are giving you.
Yeah. Marieke, I see you nodding. Do you want to add?
Yes, well, I really agree with the idea that there's a political event and an activist event with stand up for human rights, and that companies may support that and not the other way around. So it's not a good cause, it's not a marketing stunt, basically, that we prevent that from happening. I see a lot of parallels with greenwashing, what we've seen in earlier years of sustainability and sustainable products, where companies would also use that as a good cause and then get credit for it. And I think what would be beneficial is if we would apply the same kind of checks and balances to companies that we did earlier in the days with greenwashing, that we now do with pinkwashing, so that we ask companies to show, as Elda said, what do you do throughout the year? Also, what do you do, for example, with the extra income that comes from marketing your good faith, basically? And also, who else do you support? And that comes down, I think, also in part to transparency registers towards politicians, because if you are a company, most likely, if you're a big one, at least you have a lobbyist that will go to either a European Union institute or to a local government, national government, and that we show who is talking to whom. And that if you are a company and then at the same time talking to an anti-LGBTQ politician, that we then that we see the hypocrisy, that we call out hypocrisy if it's there. And at the same time, that companies should also kind of, I think companies can do a lot in that sense as well, that they can show themselves as being subordinate to a cause and not the main event, basically. But I think we can also help from either soft laws, so rules and regulations that are voluntary, or even hard laws to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I see Luis raised a hand.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe I will, my thing will be of guilt here because I'm the one liberal in the panel. But then actually, like in that sense, it's actually interesting because, you know, I think that coming from the perspective of a Central European nation, I think that, you know, the presence of corporations, which is basically, we have been known that we have our economies built up on outsourcing. So we have many multinational companies building up here, call centers, and so on, giving so many opportunities to employees. But then I think that what I totally agree, I think that what we need to have, the key is critical thinking, always being scrutinizing and then having a critical eye on it. With that said, I think that one thing that here in Hungary is very well embraced is an initiative that is called Nyitott Vagyunk, which is we are open. And then this is actually driven by employees and not by the companies themselves. And then we have to embrace and then like continue supporting actually those employees that feel part of the brand because it's part of community, and then they build up themselves the diversity initiatives. Now with pinkwashing, I want to actually say something with political parties, because political parties can also do pinkwashing and then can pin up actually that rainbow flag only on the month of the Pride, and then during the rest of the year, not talking about LGBT issues. So this is actually something that we have to be very aware and very critical with all our politicians and all of our political parties. So if we have representatives that are just raising the flag because they want the likes of the LGBT and the community, and they just go to the Pride because elections are coming up, that is a bad sign, and that we have to be very critical with them as well.
Yeah, very understandable. Very good point, Luis. Thank you very much. Matt, did you also want to add something here?
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, I think I agree with most of what's been said. I think, you know, whatever your opinion is of liberal capitalism, I think I agree with Luis that in certain countries in Europe, but certainly across other parts of the world, corporates can actually be the first key to unlock the journey on the way to equality. They do hold enormous amounts of power. They do have access into government offices, all of that stuff, right? So I think it would be naive to kind of completely remove them from our menu of political options in terms of driving forward the equality and dignity agenda. However, I also do agree with what some others have said. We ran a campaign a couple of years ago. It was US context, but we looked at the two indexes that the Human Rights Campaign, the main LGBT organization in the US, produced. One is the Corporate Equality Index, and one is the Congressional Scorecard. And we found out that some companies that were literally scoring 100% on the Corporate Equality Index, so turning their logos rainbow, making a big song and dance about how LGBT friendly they are. Look at us, we're number 1 or number 2 on the Corporate Equality Index. When you look at the Congressional Scorecard, they were actually not just talking to, but funding some of the most violently homophobic and transphobic politicians in the whole country. Yeah. And we called that out. We named and shamed those companies because we don't think that's acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for that answer as well. The next answer is actually the next question is actually one that has that we've when we assembled questions for the panelists came up with, but I just see that it's also questions coming from the audience, which is yeah, basically the last question before we go into the questions directly from the audience, which is how can people who are joining and are watching, what can they do? What can they do to help? And maybe in a broader sense, even we in Europe, what can we do to further LGBTIQ plus rights globally? What can Europe do for people? First of all, for people outside of Europe, but also for people who are coming here, for example, for refugees that are coming here that are queer. What are the things that we have in our possibility to accomplish? Yeah, Matt, yes.
I mean, I'll just lead with like one very micro example, actually. I'm not going to make a big holistic political point here. And it's a campaign we've been working on recently in Germany, and to enable those seeking refugee status and asylum to have LGBT plus friendly interpreters and translators is incredibly important. Imagine the trauma that you've been through before seeking asylum, and then we're getting reports of so many cases in Germany where the interpreters are themselves homophobic and transphobic, are actually kind of making slurs and insults during interviews because they know that the German authorities can't understand. And so that just, it's a very easy and simple, like to go back to some of the things that Marieke was talking about, where some things are just low-hanging fruit, the provision of LGBT-friendly interpreters for refugees and asylum seekers.
That's a really good point. I saw all of the other members also nodding at that, but the first one I see is Elder, who unmuted himself. So please go ahead.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with Matt, and that was an excellent example. I think we have two levels regarding what you have asked. One is a European institutional level, and the other is a personal one. Europe has to become or to come back to be humanists, and the human rights have to be on top and not real political or economic interests. That's what is happening right now. And if we have ways of punishing people or countries, sorry, that penalizing them who are not fulfilling the treaties, we have to go on and not be afraid of, but we need that product or we need that, and so become less economical and more humane, more human rights driven. And that comes into not only refugees, but also migrants. It's a shame what is happening in Europe. And what Matt says is unfortunately true. Many times countries do have policies to receive people, but then do not have the right people to receive them. On a personal level, and just very, very quickly, I think either you are an ally, either you are a member, an LGBT person yourself. Do not allow others to joke about things. Like you should not allow people to say racist jokes or misogynist jokes. Do not shut up when something is joking about a butch lady or an effeminate guy or a trans people. Do not let that. That's what you personally can do. Listen, I'm hearing, and that's not right. You should change. And after that, perhaps being a little bit pedagogical, but I think you can have always something to say.
Very much. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I see Luis having raised the hand already multiple times. I think you wanted to probably interject at some point. So I'd give you the floor right now.
As much as it hurts to say, it's very hard from a political stand to actually being in a country that is being sanctioned, and called for sanctions. I totally agree with Helder. And then I think that this is very sad, because when we call for sanctions for Hungary, when we call for actually economic sanctions, and then to continue holding the recovery plan of Hungary and not approving it, I'm very aware that it's actually impacting the lives of many. But when you have a corrupt government that is being completely manipulative and completely disregarding human rights, that's the only language that they speak. Europe has to set an example of consequences. The European Parliament and the parliaments and the national level have to stop to be a political theater. They have to act, and then we need to actually be more serious with sanctions. And then this is also outside Europe. We already saw that, for example, Norwegian funds got, we got sanctioned, and then we will not be receiving in Hungary Norwegian funds. And then outside countries, they also have many governments in place that they only speak the language of economic sanctions. So we need to actually set up an example. And then I sound the most illiberal person in the world right now. But then I think that we need to continue on a path where we actually set precedent, that we need to stand for human rights, and that we are not just bluffing out with symbolic words, but then we have actually a system of consequences. And then actually what Europe can do and what people can do, I do think that is actually something important, which is be always on the defense, and then be always on the watch, because rights are not granted. The fight is not over and the work is not finished. So actually it's very important that a lot of people ask us, what can we do to help Hungary? And then I continue saying, protect your democracy. Don't let this disease to continue being spreading. Yes, help us spreading the message. Help us financing free media, because we don't have free media, and many countries outside Europe don't have free media. Let's help with those little steps. But most of all is protect your own democracies as well, and then try to do the step to eliminate, like the conditions for this disease to continue spreading.
Marieke.
Yeah, how can I add to that? I think, because I agree with what was said previously by everybody, and I think what may be added is that to keep speaking out also on a policy level, on systemic level. So internationally, for example, whether it be through foreign policy or international trade or international development cooperation, that we always put human rights on the table, and that we always discuss rights of LGBT+ as well, and that we always pursue the protection of rights in what we do in the rest of the world. So what we preach here, that we always show that globally as well. And I think what we could do in Europe, next to sorry, I can't speak short. So besides being showing solidarity with each other and showing and speaking out, what we also could do more in Europe is to recognize each other's laws. So for example, if you're married in one country, you're also married in the other one, and that we can work more towards that legal framework next to the social framework that we need to have. And I think I fully agree with what was said about protect your own democracy, but also show that there's a sense of urgency that what is my democracy that I also concern myself with the democracy of others, and that I don't see a difference in that. So when it comes to an attack on human rights anywhere in Europe, outside of Europe, it's a matter of urgency for me personally, and that can be on an individual level or on an activist level, but also on a governmental level. So also, have high standards for the politicians that you support, and criticize those that are hypocrites or that call them out. I mean, have a strong voice in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. Another question that came in is about the question: what happens, or what can we do if we have such laws as anti-gay laws, or if basically homosexuality is banned in a certain country? And what are the courses of action that we have as Europeans if acceptance fails, if homophobia spreads? And if we make a step backward, what are the chances that we have to work against it in a concerted, in a coordinated fashion? Maybe Marieke, if you just want to start again.
I think that's always really difficult, because when you're in a country and that ban concerns you, then I think you always have to be concerned with your own safety first. And then call out for help, and then I think when you call out, others will always answer, and then do the little that you can. So whether it be surviving, whether it be seeking refuge somewhere else, and that's if it concerns you. And if for people outside who are more safe, have more freedom to move, make sure that those stories are told. I think that's sort of a low threshold that we can all reach, that we make sure that the actual effects of laws are being told. So a law is just a piece of paper, and sometimes people can overlook how important something is. So that is something that we can all as individuals do. And of course, then there are bigger steps, but then that's sometimes difficult, because as an individual, you don't always know how to reach the right politician or the right organization. But yeah, always be on the standby for a little help what you can give.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Matt.
Yeah, when things do start going bad, and they do in so many places around the world, outside of Europe particularly, but also, as we've discussed over the last hour or so, inside of Europe, for me, the first step is to talk to people like Luis, people who are on the ground, and ask them, what do you need? What do you need from us in order to be safe, but also fight back? And I think within that, for me, the notion of unity, of a unified European LGBT plus movement is incredibly important. I think, to be blunt, I think we engage in huge transaction costs, fighting with each other over the smallest details, and we don't have time with people like Orbán in power. We don't have time for those little fights about identities, etc. We need a united front, and we need to listen to those who are living and existing in those countries that are in danger.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Luis, do you want to answer directly? Also,
I think that the one thing, actually, like when it comes to actually those stories, there are millions of people, and then this is the most painful process for us when we see the enactment of this legislation. I am a 34-year-old man in politics, quite self-secure myself, and then with a community here in Budapest, in a large city. But in smaller cities and villages in Hungary and all across Europe, I think that there is like so many people who feel completely alone and devastated because they do see this, and then they feel even more isolated. And then our suicide rates are actually on the roof, especially on youth. I think that one thing that we should be doing is living out of our own bubble, and then actually going even a little bit more humble on saying it is great that we actually have spaces where we can voice out in this way, but then the conversation is not top down. The conversation is on the ground. We need to go to the people. We need to actually introduce ourselves, because many times actually there are many people in the countrysides of many of our European countries that don't know someone like us, that they have never met someone out, and then they will actually change their mentality just because there's a lot of good out there. but there is also a lot of apathy. And because there is a lot of people that apathy is our biggest enemy, I think we need to engage them and then to reach them in order to activate them politically, and then for them to see that they're accepted, they're not alone. We need to do this exercise of a community building and bringing them out to politics. I mean, politics is a fun thing to do. At the end of the day, you meet beautiful people, you get a lot of hope. And then I know this is like the most incredible thing that that has happened, but I know that in as bad the situation is in Hungary, hope is there because of the few people that open the door and then they show you the smile and then they show you acceptance. So I think that there is a lot of work to be done on the ground, and then that we can all do.
Thank you. And Elder.
Well, usually I'm very optimistic, but regarding this subject, I'm not optimistic. I'm rather pessimistic. And I'm sorry, I will attack Luis liberalism again. I'm joking, but when we look at Hungary, we see that during the last years, there was a loss of justice independence. Judges were attacked. Media was attacked and journalists lost their independence. Last year, trans people vanished. They stopped being recognized. And then marriages between the same-sex couple stopped being recognized. Now we are talking a lot about this new law, and what about the years before, you know? And what I think is that regarding LGBTQ phobias in all over the world, we have dictatorships, we have countries that do not respect human rights, we have death penalty, where people are tortured, where people are stoned, where women have no rights at all. And we keep dealing with them because they have some raw materials we need, because they are important in that area. So we continue to have business with Brazil or with dictatorships in South America or in Africa or in the Middle East or with China, for example. So this is a matter of human rights. And we have to solve the human rights issue, not before, but at the same time, we deal with LGBT rights because they are human rights. And we have to stop caring just about economics, because it is very easy to attack countries we do not depend on, like Cuba. Everyone was fighting Cuba. I do not defend the regime in Cuba, but everyone, it was really easy. But it's not so easy to attack China, you know? And it's like we have two different measures, and we have to be more firm when it comes to human rights, defending them wherever they are being violated, regardless of the importance of the country. Perhaps then we can put in place some good rules that defend the rights.
Thank you so much. Well, it looks like we're almost at the very end of our panel discussion. I've been enjoying it immensely. I also enjoy that we don't always have the same opinions, but we are united in what we are wishing for Europe and wishing for LGBTIAQ plus people in Europe specifically. So let me just quickly give you a very big thanks for coming in, for joining us. And for giving all your the perspective, that the specific perspective that you bring to the table. That has been very, very interesting and very, very nice. Thank you so much. I would now give over to Kim, because as we've just discussed a lot of topics around politics and policy and human rights in Europe, we're now moving to a little bit lighter part of the Volt Pride 2021, as here in Copenhagen it just rained a couple of I would say like half an hour ago, and now the sun is back out and we may be able to see a rainbow. I just want to give you that impression from Copenhagen here. So thank you again, everyone. Thanks also for the questions from the audience. And with that, I would move over to Kim.
Thank you, Connie. And indeed, what an exciting panel. And they covered so much ground in an hour. It's very impressive. So a huge thanks to everyone for that. Indeed, as Connie mentioned, I think it's time for us to digest a little bit what we heard, to really think about all the different facets and all the things that the different panelists have provided for us. So I want to give you a little challenge. So if you're actually listening to us, write in the chat, what was the one thing that came out most to you, that really impressed you, or that struck you, or that challenged you. So write that in the chat so that we can kind of see where everybody's at. And whilst you're doing that, I have a huge pleasure to bring somebody to the stage who's going to give us a little bit of a musical change, so that we can also kind of take a little rest and to think about things in a slightly different way. And always, creativity is always great when you have a bit of music around you. So I want to bring somebody from Lyon, France. So we're going to France. Thomas is going to join us and is going to give us a few songs that he composed, especially for you, especially for Volt Pride. So it's a world first. It's great to have a premiere right here on this stage. And Thomas, take it away.
Thank you very much, Kim. So this first song is called We Are the 12 Stars. And it's a test for, I try to do a very pro-European song, and you tell me if it works.
Down the Rhine to Rotterdam,
Then the pan-European party, you know for who to vote. We dress in purple, and our name is Volt. We have our own pride, it's even in a stream. We'll be building bridges with the whole team. We are the ode to joy. We are the 12 stars. We are the ode to joy. Stitching together. We are you. We are the 12 stars. Once again from the top, we are you. We are the 12 stars. We are you. We are the 12 stars. We are you. We are the 12 stars. All right, so I have a small presentation for my second song, and then we can continue this stream. So yeah, this next song is a very deep subject that I try to treat in a fun way. It's about finding a common ground and avoiding a third world war. So it's relevant because in Europe we've been also so impacted by the world war. So in this song, it's me directly addressing the leaders of the world. So you name it, there's Vladimir Putin, Joe Biden, Xi Jinping, and just try to not mess up and have a third world war. right, so that's all for me. Thank you very much. What do I have for parting words? Yes, if you'd like to see me live, I'll be playing in Munich in September and in Copenhagen in November. And that's all events organized by Volt. So in theory for Volt audience. And thank you so much for organizing this Pride. And I hope I helped to make it a fun event. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
Du fond du cœur, Thomas, merci beaucoup. C'était fantastic. It was really fantastic. Huge thanks from the bottom of my heart. I hope everyone was left inspired by this wonderful musical interlude, which gave us a chance to really think about what the panel had to say and also to think about what we can do to ensure that our leaders get their shit together. So a huge thanks, Thomas, for that wonderful contribution. I love the 12-star song and I hope you enjoyed it as well. So we're going to switch to gear to talk a little bit about politics again. And I want to kind of highlight, that for those of you who are thinking about whether you should be participating in politics, whether you're thinking about whether it makes sense, you vote and you feel that sometimes it doesn't change. Well, we are on the right side of history. Those of us who are fighting for human rights or fighting for equality, fighting for diversity and inclusion, we have always been on the right side of history. And when things go bad, we will always come back on the other side even stronger. And I think that's something to really hold on to. But to make that happen, the panel before highlighted some important ingredients. Those ingredients are things like politicians who are courageous enough to speak up when things are being done against other people, against the most vulnerable amongst us in society. They talked about the importance of awareness raising, of not letting things go, of not letting injustice go. They talked about the importance of visibility. And they also talked very much about the importance of role models. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit now. We're going to talk about role models, which Volt is trying to empower, trying to ensure that our mantra of making politics for the people, by the people, ensuring that people-centered politics is a reality, that will only be possible through political candidates and candidates who are willing to speak up, are willing to stand up for your rights, and are willing to not shut up when things are going wrong. So we're going to have a little tour of Europe with some of our political candidates who are currently campaigning in different countries to try to ensure that Volt's message reaches the highest levels of power and that we're able to change this Europe and make it more inclusive the way we dream it all together. So I want to first welcome to the floor Vitor, who is going to come to talk to us a little bit about the campaign that he's running. And he's running in Portugal and he's running in the local elections. So, right from the grassroots, trying to make things possible. So Vitor, I hope that you hear me. Welcome to the stage. And we'd love to hear a little bit more from you about what you're campaigning about, how the campaign's going, and more from you. So Vitor, you have 8 minutes, go for it.
Hello, nice to meet you. And thank you for this opportunity to talk a little bit about my campaign. Well, my name is Vitor. I'm from Lisbon. I'm 54 years old. Professionally, I'm bailiff. And in Volt, I have the role of General Secretary here in the city team of Lisbon. So I will run for a parish council here inside Lisbon. We are running in 4 parish councils here in Lisbon. Also, we are also running to the General Assembly of the city and also to the place of mayor. The parish council that I'm running for, it's called São Vicente. It's one of the oldest places here in Lisbon. It has around, I would say, 10,000, 11,000 people here. So it's a very difficult task because here in the local elections, especially in Lisbon, the party that is now ruling Portugal is also the party that has the major parish councils here in Lisbon. So the focus on my proposals to here, to São Vicente, especially around a more greenable place. I want more green in this place of the town. Also, digitalization, because it's very important for me. I think it's the future. And then also it's very important that these little places have a good a good index of digitalization. Also, I want to implement, if possible, the model of citizens' assembly, because it's not very common in Portugal to do that. I think that's important to take people involved directly in politics. Specifically about these days. Also, I think it's very important that the LGBT rights are defended in every occasion. I think that starts from the principle of education. If you educate the people that work on the places, and if you educated people, by instance, this parish council has responsibilities on the local schools. So I think it's important that the local community has some awareness of the importance for the human rights to defend the LGBT rights. And I expect to do that if I have the luck, the luck of being elected here in this little parish council. I must say that Lisbon is more than 20 years, is a friendly town in that aspect. This year we didn't have the Pride March as we usually have. It's around June usually, but I think that we can do more, specifically on these points that I have mentioned. So prepare the people that work on these places on the local level and at a municipality level to be aware of the importance of the human rights so we can have a better society. So I think it's all. If you have any questions, be free.
Yes, indeed. If you have any questions for Victor, please do put them in the chat. We're gonna just huge thanks, Victor, for the presentation, and best of luck getting elected in Lisbon.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
I'm crossing fingers for you, because I think more Volt voices across all of Europe can only be a beneficial thing. So we're going to build a new bridge, this bridge from Portugal all the way to Italy. So I want to bring Stefan de Jong to talk a little bit about kind of what's happening in Italy, and he's running for the local elections in Milan. So we have a nice bridge cutting across Southern Europe to Italy. So welcome to the stage, and please tell us more about what you're planning to do, why you're campaigning, and all these wonderful things. And Stefan, don't forget to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry, I didn't understand. You already introduced me. So thank you very much, Kim. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the bad audio and video quality, but I'm actually in the car. Fortunately, not driving myself. So my name is Stefan de Jong. I am a Belgian living since many years in Italy, and I'm also a member of the board of Volt Italy. I'm also active in the Milan team, and I will be one of the candidates in the Milan local elections, which will take place on 3 and 4 of October of this year, so in less than 2 months from now. Actually, to see one of the questions we were asked to cover was which LGBTQIA+ issues are we covering in our campaign? Well, actually, not many, since this is a local election. It's not really something which is open for or where that sort of matters can be legalized. Although, as you probably know, these kind of matters which are related to civil rights, to civil liberties, are always a little bit of an issue in Italy. And fact of the matter is actually that's quite an interesting evolution in the Italian political landscape, since this year we even have a gay party. So are apparently specifically focusing on our community. Although I must say, speaking with lots of people, they don't really like the idea, because they say, well, why should we put ourselves into a ghetto? And I must say that is something where Volt Italy, Volt Milano is almost living in what should be the happy future, where actually LGBTQIA+ is just a non-issue. On the Italian board, we are 8 people currently, 3 of which are part of this community. I counted our candidates in Milan. We are 42 candidates, 8 of which I am aware of our community. Now, it's possible that there are more people. I really don't know what people do in their bedrooms. It's not really my business, but at least 20% of them I know are. Our front person, our lead candidate, is gay, and of the first 10 candidates, we have actually 3 people who are gay. So that's even 30% on the front candidates. So it's just a non-issue. It's just a normality, and I think that is actually nice. It's of course living in a bubble, because society, the world around us, definitely Italy, isn't like that yet, but at least we are sort of pretending that we are already living there. And I can give you another significant example. Actually, there was a debate here in Milan amongst candidates recently of different parties. And there was of the Partito Democratico, which is the biggest left-wing party here in Italy. There was the candidate who was the person in charge of rights and liberties. It was, of course, part of the LGBTIAQ community and somewhere down on the list. And then there was another smaller, still left-wing and so-called progressive party, and they had their LGBT issue specialist who was also to be found somewhere near the end of the list. And then there was our lead candidate. And well, wasn't there just in sort of representation of some kind of minority, but it was just a lead candidate who happens to be gay. And so I think that just by treating things as normality, just treating things as a non-issue is probably what hopefully 10, 20 years from now will be the case everywhere. This doesn't say that, of course, we shouldn't fight a battle. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep the war going. But let's say in this campaign, currently in Italy, where we are sometimes actually speaking that it's perhaps time that we start protecting our poor straight minority. That's exaggerated. But let's say at least we live in this very happy bubble where actually being part of the LGBTIAQ community is just not a struggle. It's not a battle. It's just like that. It's just a fact, like having blue eyes or blonde hair, like being tall, like being short, like being a mathematician or being an economist or being a lawyer. It's just part of your personality, but not something you need to explain, you need to tell, you need to justify, and most definitely not something of which you have to be discriminated. So let's all close our eyes, not the people who are driving the car in which I'm sitting, and dreaming of this beautiful future, which hopefully will be ours very soon. So with this, I really congratulate everyone and thank everyone who has been working very, very hard in making today's event a big success. And of course, I also wish the best of luck to my other colleagues, candidates in the upcoming election, because I really think that with Volt, this world of normality and of just taking everything for granted is coming at a faster pace towards us, and we will hopefully all be able to live in this world where being LGBTIQ, well, who cares? Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Stefan. It's great to have you in the car. Luckily, you're being driven and that you're doing this safely. So I hope that you enjoyed that little visit to Milan. And of course, you know, Brussels is calling you, Stefan. Come back to Belgium sometimes. We miss you. I want to now give a new bridge, and we're going to go northwards. So we're going from Italy to Germany. And in Germany, we have very important national elections which are taking place. And of course, Volt is contesting in that election. So we're very much hoping that one of our biggest Volt chapters will reach some electoral successes. Of course, it is a German MEP who was the first to cross the halls of the European Parliament for Volt. And so we're very much looking forward to the national elections leading to some similar electoral success if the German electorate agrees. So first up is Paula, who's going to be talking to you about kind of her experiences at the moment in the national election. And I'm very curious to hear how things are going and kind of what your experience has been and what kind of your feedback is from Volt Pride and kind of where you're looking forward to do it when you're elected into the national parliament.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping you can all understand me clearly. Thank you for introducing me, Kim, and good to see you again. I'm Paula, and I'm just turned 20 years old a few days ago. I'm living in Düsseldorf right now, so west in Germany, North Rhine-Westphalia. And just ground data, I use she, her pronouns, and I identify as pansexual. And I'm in or within Volt Europa for a year kind of now. And I started pretty small with like local events lead classic in my city and just kind of checking out what I can do and what we can do as Volt also. And pretty fast I went onto the European level and I went into the internal communication. And this is also where I met Kim for the first time. And yeah, then we had the national elections coming up. And the national elections, for that we need an electoral program. So we started writing that in Germany, and then also we transferred and did some policies on the European level. And this is where it started. What do we want to do if we get into the national parliament? And I'm really proud to say that we have some policies within these electoral program, which really makes me happy, and also which are my topics, as I'm mostly wrote with on the topic of equality, and not only LGBTQIA+ equality, but also on female equality and just equality in general. I wrote the policy period poverty, which really makes me proud that we can present that if we get into the parliament. But also I picked a favorite policy, which I also loved making reels about on social media. And I think it's just a really great thing, and it should be normalized right now, but it isn't, and it is not in many countries, which is the right of parentage, so that people of the same gender can be equally parenting. And this is the thing which I would love to get on the national parliament if we get in, and this would be the thing I would want to move forward with. And I guess just the basic thing, I really learned that while writing an electoral program for the first time, and also when I went onto the street. We are going onto the street for a few months already now, and we will go on 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks I think are coming, and this is just education, which is such a huge part. And so many people, even if they went into school, into university, there are so many basic knowledge things kind of missing, just because you are not affected on one topic, and you're just like, okay, because this doesn't affect your particular life situation, you never heard of it, or you never kind of read about it or learned about it somehow. And this was a thing that was really just not even in my brain that much. And I loved seeing how within our German chapter and also the European chapter, we had many new policies, and maybe learning also people getting on the board and saying, okay, this is important, we need this topic in our electoral program. And on the street now, the same thing, that we see also so many people happy if we move these topics forward and give them space and room and say, this is important, it's important to educate people about this. And it's not a thing that we should like somehow not give a priority, because it only affects some people. So this is the thing that kind of makes me the most proud, that we really have an education that is educating people for everyone, and in a tolerant way and an open way, and that we want to broaden the horizon and not minimize it with our electoral program. I would say this is what makes me the happiest right now, and which I would want to do if I get into the national parliament. Also, I would be the youngest parliamentarian, which would also be pretty cool. But also I would love to just, renew our education program and our education system, make it more open, make it more tolerant, and show a few more horizons and not only one. I guess that would be it for me, my wishes.
Fala, that was incredible, and a huge thanks. And I really wish that you will become the youngest. So fingers crossed that we get you through. We'll work very hard throughout the entire Volt movement to get you there. I want to now switch over to the last but not least of our candidates, one of our lead candidates actually at the national elections. So it's really great to have Elga joining us. Elga, we've had a wonderful tour of across Europe of the different candidates at local election and national election, but really would love to hear from you as well, kind of your perspective and kind of your aspirations and what the German electorate can expect if they hire you for the job.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Thanks a lot. Great to be here tonight. As Kim said, I'm Helge. I'm a gay man from Germany, and I refer to myself as he, him. Yes, and I'm running for the national elections in Germany this year. My political focus is to see social justice and the climate-friendly transformation of economy and society as two sides of the same thing, actually. Because if we lose sight of one of the two sides, we will lose both or might lose both. This is an important issue for me. Where we don't focus on social justice, societies break apart. Populists are coming to power who do not care only about climate protection, but also we as LGBTIAQ plus people run the risk of losing our dignity again. I was just 1 year old when Stonewall happened on the Christopher Street in New York. And that was the moment where LGBTIAQ plus people started to fight for our rights. 23 years later, when I came out, I had also received my share of discrimination and humiliation as common at that time. And that's actually why I believe that if we want to make Europe more queer friendly, it is important to move from fighting for something to working towards something. In dividing societies, we should look for what unites us and create understanding even within our own movement. The leaders in Poland and in Hungary, I don't believe that they are homophobic. They try to exploit minorities like us for their own purposes. That's the whole thing, I believe. And here, strife and struggle will lead to further division. That is the game of populists. Peaceful protest and understanding will take us further in today's world, I believe. I am deeply convinced on that, actually. And this is where my political agenda meets my personal compass, so to speak. And that's why I'm really happy to be here. And happy Pride, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much, Helge. And this completes a short tour of different Volt candidates. And of course, there are many others who haven't had a chance to speak, but just so that you're aware that there's an entire movement, a pan-European movement of inspiring candidates, just like the ones you heard, who are going to be working tirelessly for you and trying to make sure that Europe is built around your needs and your focus. So it's really been an incredible journey. And I thank all the candidates for taking some time to speak to us a little bit about their vision and really how their vision contributes to Volt's vision around making Europe more inclusive, around making Europe more queer friendly, around making Europe more proud of its LGBTIAQ plus community. As part of this, we have also had some of our wizards working behind the scenes to create a small little video which captures a little bit the vibe that you get from the different prides around Europe. And unfortunately, of course, many of us aren't able to travel because of COVID-19, but this is a great way for us to travel around Europe and to experience a little bit what we've been missing and what we're hoping to be able to re-enjoy in the coming years. Team, roll the video.
Welcome back. That was our Pride supercut, short video of all the events that happened throughout the year. Usually we would now have the call in from Bucharest. Unfortunately, there are some technical difficulties and we cannot get in touch with Christina Saracu, who is, or rather was at the Pride in Bucharest. We tried to get in touch with her, but it was such a bad connection that we think it's better to not share that. So we will move on to the next topic in our list for the event, which is the country panorama. I will give over to Kim for that in a minute. But just to inform you that we might have something to fill in for the call from Bucharest, and we're trying to figure out how quickly we can get that on the stage, and if we can get that on the stage. So please, look forward to more to come on this topic. Kim, please.
Thanks. Thanks, Connie, and fingers crossed we can get a connection with Bucharest. Brussels is looking forward to connecting with our peers on the other side of Europe. So everyone, we're going to do a small little country panorama. The idea here is to really understand what is the kind of the state of the union when it comes to LGBTIAQ plus rights. So we have asked some wonderful speakers to come and talk to us a little bit from their country perspective, kind of what's happening, what are the things that we can celebrate, what are the things that we need to be less or perhaps more concerned about, and what are things that we together as a pan-European movement, as a pan-European progressive movement in favor of LGBTIAQ plus rights, what can we do all together? So allow me to first introduce Marco, who is going to be talking to us from his place. So allow me to build a bridge from me here in Brussels to you, and I give you as well the floor and the mic to tell us a little bit what's happening in your country.
Thank you so much, Kim. And thank you to everyone who's watching and takes an interest in seeing how Portugal is doing and also what needs to be done. I actually have prepared a presentation, if I could just share it. So if everyone can, I don't know, but I think everyone can see it now. My name is Marco Graça. I'm one of the co-leads from the LGBTQIA task force in Volt Portugal. I have just started this year. And it will be this year that I'll be trying to give a bit of an overview from a queer perspective on everything that has been happening here in terms of queer rights. First, on a health perspective, I would like to start with great news. In this year, on the 19th of March, officially, there are no more bans of any sorts to homosexuals from blood donations. No bans that are focused on whether a sexual orientation or a gender identity. This was a big victory, and now every place that offers a way to offers the questionnaires that people need to fill, and now has to remove the old questionnaires that had mentions to any sexual orientations, explicit sexual orientations. Also, an NGO organization, Refugee, released a comprehensive report on the trans healthcare situation in Portugal, which is good from a point of view of giving everyone the resources just as they are, but also bad in how it evidenced the serious lacks and also the infestation of people with a lot of transphobic ideas in the systems that are constantly delaying and also making impediments towards people that want to get access to just healthcare. Studies by the faculties of psychology in Porto also revealed that the mental health risk was very, very high on the young LGBTQIA community in Portugal, even especially compared to other communities during this pandemic. Specifically for having to be trapped with families that aren't so inclusive or other oppressive environments. When it comes to visibility, this year marked also, just as the year before, the cancellation of the Pride Parade. The cancellation of the Pride Parade was supposed to happen on the 19th of June, and also the notification of its cancellation occurred on the same day. The reason for this, as given by the committee that was organizing it, was based on the unprofessionalism and the disregard for the protesting nature of the event by the Directorate General for Health in Portugal. However, they can only give their opinions. They can only give their opinions. So the decision amounted to a final vote, but with a negative opinion from this directorate. However, over 300 people still reunited at the intended location to celebrate the date, but now without any of the committee's planned health safety strategies in place. On the 17th of March of this year, an online petition was launched to rename a Porto street to Rua Gisberta, a trans woman that died in February of 2006. That was also a sex worker and homeless. She was a victim of a crime perpetrated by 14 boys between the ages of 12 to 16, and the event that was also the reason for the start of the Porto Pride parades. The event of this year, Porto's Pride, concluded with the unrolling of a giant parchment with the names of everyone who signed the petition. And we were all awaiting for news on whether this proposal goes ahead or not. On the matters of politics, unfortunately, on the 23rd of July of this year, the Constitutional Court of Portugal declared one part of the law on the law that refers to the right of self-determination in Portugal, and a very important law for the trans community in Portugal. They declared norms on education unconstitutional. These laws were referring to including education programs that would give young people the means to research how to self-determine their own gender identity. But unfortunately, the state saw this as ideological programming and banned it. Also, the rising far-right party of Portugal, Chega, show their public support for the Hungary's legislation that defends the institutional family, as they said, and defended that Hungary's position didn't constitute in any way an attack on any group. However, another deputy, Cristina Rodrigues, that doesn't belong to any party, proposed a ban on conversion therapies, and the accompanying petition from Outlaws joined this power and now has over 8,000 signatures. When it comes to safety of the LGBTQ community, on July of this year, Portugal's only shelter home for trans immigrants, specifically from Brazil, raised and met their crowdsourcing campaigning goal for their second year. Portugal now has 3 major focused shelters for LGBTQIA people: Tea House for trans immigrants, Riajo for displaced youth, and Rainbow House for domestic violence victims. However, when it comes to individual reports, on the 24th of May, a couple kissing were a victim of a false anonymous report that involved bringing a lot of police to a public Lisbon garden, which resulted in a lot of public outrage that then had to be clarified by the police. On the 12th of June, a group of friends at a Porto Cafe were subjected to transphobic remarks by its owners and encouraged not to make a complaint by a passing officer. And on the 21st of July, an establishment near Viseo's Chega head office, a young man was unfortunately verbally and physically attacked by militants of that party, including the city candidate of Viseu. I will now talk on how Volt tries to make their change in their agenda for this year. We made an effort to visit all Pride events across all the cities in Portugal, in an effort to say that queer rights are not only just a cosmopolitan matter; they also affect the isolated cities, and those in all towns and villages, and all of those need our help. We created a strong legislation that aims to ban any conversion practices, is a step that is very important and still missing in Portugal. And unfortunately, we know that conversion practices are still happening and are still going strong here. And we also try to explore options to include, to make an inclusive sexual education classes for elders, as elders are often a community that unfortunately don't have the same access to resources on how to perform safe sex, or aren't really encouraged to do so due to social stigma. If you want to get in touch and see how if you want to get in touch with other and suggest new propositions, please reach us in on our social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marco, for giving us this wonderful update from Portugal, which really highlights, I think, the mixed bag situation that we're having all across Europe. We have some great progress on some hands, and then things which make us renew our efforts that nothing can be taken for granted. There is still a lot of work to be done. So a huge thanks, Marco, for this update. We're going to move straight along and create a new bridge. This bridge is going to go from Portugal all the way to Denmark. And of course, Denmark is hosting Volt Pride, so it's a great place to stop as well. So Catherine, it's great to have you on stage, and please tell us all about what's happening in Denmark. How was Volt Pride going? What is your takeaway? And what is Volt's contribution to all of the things happening in Denmark?
Oh my God, where to start? But thank you so much. My name is Catherine Richter. I am the country lead here in Volt in Denmark. I have been here with Volt for 3 years, and currently running my first election campaign here in Denmark, where I'm running for the local elections here in Frederiksberg, where I live. What I would say about Volt Pride in Denmark and, well, in Copenhagen and Malmö is, oh my goodness, it's been so COVID, and we had a World Cup where people were getting together and gathering in large groups, but still Volt Pride was being questioned, like, oh well, can we have pride marches? We're not sure. What about safety, etc., etc. And so we really saw how organizations are being treated differently depending on how perhaps, well, different reasons. But it certainly it had a big impact, of course, on how Volt Pride was able to be executed. Thankfully, Volt Pride is organized by an amazing bunch of volunteers and just a lot of passionate people. But I think mostly what we're taking away from all this is, after a year of 18 months of Corona, of being separated, of being online, and literally being offline with so many important issues concerning the LGBTQ+ community, it's just more important now than ever for allies and members of the community to come together and join up and stand together and I was going to say hug and kiss, but certainly high five and elbow. Yeah. Because look at what is happening in our Europe. I mean, look at what's happening in our neighboring countries. So just today, we took part in a protest right here in Copenhagen against the anti-LGBT laws that are being presented in Poland and Hungary. And these things are happening beyond our borders, but in our community, because in our Europe, we really need to take our values seriously. And I think Volt Pride is, for me personally, such a kickoff in really underlining for everyone, not just here in Denmark, but also for us here in Volt, to say we are responsible not just for ourselves, for our own community, but we're responsible for the values that we want to promote. And so being at this demonstration today, listening to the speeches of different people, it wasn't only about the speeches and standing out in front of the embassies where people might not be listening at all to what's going on. It was for ourselves. It was reminding ourselves, as I think most people also echoed that in the first panel discussion, was that how important it is for us to know that we're together, know that there's real solidarity between not just people, but between countries as well. And this is where I think we see one of the most fundamental flaws in what's happening in Europe today, is that we don't yet quite know how to tackle cross-border issues that relate to values. We are still stuck, politically, we're still stuck in this national framework. So, for example, what was happening last year was really what was happening in Poland, what was happening in Hungary. What we saw all of a sudden was that the things that we knew had been taking place inside Poland, inside Hungary, all of a sudden took upon itself a transnational issue when they threatened to veto the European Green Deal. So all of a sudden, we had been tolerating this national discrimination policy. We'd been saying, well, what can we do? What can national politicians do? What can we really do? But the moment it became a European threat, that's when everybody realized, okay, we actually need to do something, and Article 7 was triggered. But why is it that we had to wait? Why is it that we don't have that European sense of solidarity and unity and saying, whatever happens to my sisters and brothers, you know, all over Europe, it matters. And so the World Pride, again, for me, is something where we truly see solidarity, allies coming together, communities coming together across borders, understanding that to really make a difference where we are, where we live, we have to come together. First we come together, then we spread out and make our change. And, you know, it's something that I see happening really truly. I see it in the queer community, but I think it's something that every community has to do. You know, whether it's a sports community or whether it's a knitting community, you know, I mean, we can really translate the values and the power and the experiences generated from the amazing and, you know, the powerful LGBTQ plus community and translate that to really all other issues that are transnational and are cross-border. So something that's happening in Denmark is, and I spoke to a friend of mine the other day, and he reminded me very much of the issue of complacency, the issue of how thinking, well, aren't things going all right? Aren't we actually okay? Aren't we actually, I mean, people can get married, right? Isn't that okay? And I mean, rainbow families, way they're happening. But again, as the panelists were saying before, the complacency and the kind of stepping back from activism, someone will push back and reclaim that territory, and we are still very much in the fighting era. Now, I'm coming to you as cisgendered woman from Scandinavia. You know, I'm an ally, but I also feel that the conversations that we're having are not being vocalized enough, because we have issues of transgender children, intersex, and all these things which we need to push here, particularly in a country where we're like, well, aren't we quite progressive? Well, that doesn't mean that we should rest. It really just means that we need to push even harder to make sure that the values of equality, the rule of law issues, which are really fundamental to what's happening in Poland and Hungary, for example, and God knows which other countries might follow suit, as we're rightly concerned about. So, for me, being a political candidate here in Denmark, I take that upon myself to use that cross-border energy to remind ourselves that we are not just within our own national borders. We are truly a European community, and nothing highlights that more than joining World Pride, than joining the LGBT community, and being an ally of that amazing community. So I've talked a lot now, and I don't know if there are any questions or anything, but what really struck me, and what is World Pride kicked off on Thursday, so this is day 2. and we have days to go yet, thankfully. But what I have found in just these couple of days is the sheer energy of coming together, knowing that we know the fight isn't over. We know that we're not here to rest, we're here to fight, and knowing what challenges lie ahead, and not just in our own comfortable community, but in our community of Europe. If we really take that seriously, we cannot rest on our laurels, because rule of law issues, equality issues persist. And we're seeing now, actions from the European Commission. Thank you. But it was only when European finances were truly threatened that action was taken. and that's just not good enough.
Thank you, Catherine. It's I think those are such bold, strong words, and it's great to hear that there's somebody who is a political candidate. And as we were talking a little bit earlier, we need politicians who are willing to speak up. And clearly, I hope those who have been listening to you hear how much passion you bring to this fight, and that the fight is never over. Indeed, that rights that we think might, we take for granted, can be taken away if we're not watching with a careful eye, and we're not willing to stand up to them when they're being challenged. So, Catherine, a huge thanks for that. And I hope World Pride proves as energetic and energizing as it already seems to be for you. And I hope that that energy permeates throughout Europe. We'll certainly be waiting with open arms here in Brussels. So thanks very much, Catherine. Moving straight along from Denmark to a not so far away country, we're going to go to Netherlands, which happens to be my fatherland. So I'm really great and really happy to have a Dutch voice here to talk a little bit about what's happening in the Netherlands. I'm living in a neighboring country, Belgium, so it's very often looking at what the Netherlands is doing to see if we should copy or if we should, outdo them. So let's see what's happening in the Netherlands, and let's see if Belgium needs to outdo them indeed for the coming years. Dan, welcome to the Volt Pride, and tell us all what's happening in the Netherlands.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for having me. Yeah, indeed, I am your Dutchie of the day. So let me just quickly share the presentation for the country panorama. So you should be seeing my presenting screen now. Are you? Yes, great. Okay, so the country panorama for the Netherlands. So yeah, just to introduce myself, I'm Daan Jansen. I am part of the EUR LGBTIAQ plus leads team, and I'm also a member of Volt Netherlands, hence that I'm here. And well, I was asked to give a sentence that describes me. So it is a queer physicist, which is sort of my day job, who wants to help Volt make the world a better place. But enough about me. Let's talk about queer stuff from the Netherlands. So just to say some things about what happened in 2021 in the Netherlands. 2021 really, well, there were some memorable anniversaries. So for instance, 2021 marks 20 years of marriage equality in the Netherlands. So in 2001, the first same-sex marriage in the world, at least in modern times, was performed in the Netherlands, which of course is something that's hugely celebrated in the Netherlands, and that the Netherlands looks, well, with some kind of pride too, but we'll get to that. Speaking of pride, it was also 25 years of Pride Amsterdam, unfortunately not in the grand version that we have it normally, but in a toned down version, but luckily Volt was also able to be a part of that this year. And also something that I wanted to highlight from this year is that a couple of weeks ago, the Dutch LGBTI rights organization COC has put forward a statement where it said it wants the Netherlands to return back to the leading position on LGBTI rights in the world. Because if you look over for instance, this ILGA Europe rankings, the Netherlands has been slowly been overtaken, so to speak, by the rest of the European countries, which to a certain respect is good, but well, we don't want to be outdone. So we're, or at least the COC, and I stand with that, wants to make a big leap forward again. So just to say some things about the current state of LGBTIAQ plus rights in the Netherlands. So one thing to note, or when you talk to some Dutch person, as I said, a lot of pride often is taken in the fact that the Netherlands was the first country to have marriage equality. So the Dutch people living in the Netherlands generally see themselves as tolerant towards LGBTQIA plus people. But unfortunately, this paints a too positive picture, because reports of violence against queer people in the Netherlands are, unfortunately, over the past 10 years have been on the rise. Recently, there has been incident on religious schools of non-consensual outings of LGBTIAQ plus students by teachers, both to fellow students and to parents. And in a recent poll, it was still said that 29% of Dutch people feels offended when they see two men kiss on the streets, versus 11% for when they see a man and a woman kiss on the street. it's also 20% for when they see 2 women kiss on the streets. So those are still, well, definitely numbers that are too high, and that signal that change and progress is still needed. And one leap that, or one hurdle that we see in this is that when there is a discussion of LGBTIAQ plus rights in politics, it's often the blame for this by certain politicians is placed on conservative Muslim people, and this vast oversimplification of where LGBTIAQ plus discrimination and hate comes from. This is used by populists for the political gains, and Volt must take a stand against this. So now, luckily, there have also been some positive developments over the past few years. So from this September on, monogamous gay men are allowed to donate blood. So before, they were only allowed to donate blood if they were without sex for, I think it was 6 months, but it might have already changed to 3 months. I must admit, I'm currently living in Germany, so the rules are, I don't have this sharp, I'm sorry. But also a positive thing, more and more political parties, including Volt, are promoting a ban of conversion therapy. So we quickly touched upon this in the panel session as well. Unfortunately, the motion is not yet approved because, well, Christian parties and the motion is not yet approved. There is not yet a majority, but hopefully we will get there. And also a very nice positive development is that recently there was a court rule about having your own choice of gender in your identification documents. So this includes in particular a gender neutral X beside the M for a man and the V for, well, vrouw in this case. But unfortunately, this has not led to a complete overhaul or to make it an easily accessible thing for people who want to change their gender in their ID. If you want an X, you have to go to court, essentially, still. Also a positive thing, we've been seeing more and more representation of queer people in the media. And well, the sort of a silver lining of the rise of violence against queer people is that besides that, we've been also seeing broad public support for the victims of violence against queer people. So this is somehow, this is a hopeful sign to some degree. So then how Volt is involved in facilitating change. So, well, as mentioned, Netherlands is the very first parliament where Volt is represented, in national parliament. And actually several motions concerning LGBTIAQ plus affairs have been introduced to parliament by Volt or were supported and approved by Volt. So for instance, this conversion therapy motion that Volt is supporting, but also a motion was introduced to speak out against the anti-LGBTI laws in Hungary. And another thing that Volt is involved in is the petition #NietGayGenoeg, which means #NotGayEnough, which is a petition to change the way the immigration service handles people who seek refuge because they are coming from a country where they are suppressed by anti-queer laws and they are themselves queer. And at this point, these people still are given very, well, unreasonable questions and have to prove their gayness or their transness or well, they have to somehow give proof of their identity, and this is done in a way that is simply, well, not good enough. So yeah, this needs to be changed, and in this petition, Volt is involved. So as I also mentioned, Volt introduced a motion against anti-LGBTQ laws. I'm not sure how I'm doing in time, so I might not discuss this too extensively, but basically this was a motion speaking out against the breakdown of democratic constitutional state and violation of fundamental human rights in Hungary. And it was widely supported and passed by the majority of parliament. And well, we like to think that that led to some indirect pressure on EU officials to make a stance and hopefully continue to make that stance and make it actually concrete. So as I said, 25 years of Amsterdam Pride. Volt was also represented there. You saw some of that also in the Pride supercut. But I just wanted to highlight this picture because I think well, the purple and rainbow somehow fits very well together. So, well, if you want to know more about what Volt Netherlands is doing, you can, or if you want to get in touch, you have some questions, you want to become a member, you want to give us critiques, fair enough. You can reach us out on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of them at Volt Nederland. And well, we and the people behind those accounts will be there for you. Thank you for your attention. I think I'm done with this presentation. Let me stop screen sharing. Yes, and well, thank you for your time.
Hartelijk bedankt. Thank you very much for this presentation, which I think really highlights that indeed the Netherlands has gone a long way, but still has some ways to go. So even if we're on the top of the leagues, there's still always a chance to do even better. So a huge thanks, Dan. And also it's great to see some real concrete examples of what Volt would do once we're in Parliament, once we're given a chance to really speak out. And I think you really see that with the way our Dutch chapter essentially has already taken some of these big issues and pushed forward on them. So huge thanks for giving us that little State of the Union from the Netherlands. We're going to go back down south. We're going now to Italy to get a sense of kind of what things are happening in that country. So a huge welcome to our Italian friends. Please let us know what's happening, and we'd love to hear more from the southern countries.
Hello everyone. So I try to share my screen. One moment. My name is Giovanni Chiara. I come from Italy, Treviso, close to Venice. I'm a member of the queer team Italian and European, and I'm going to describe the Italian queer panorama according to my personal point of view. And I decided to help with this project because I believe that we all must follow a path towards the emancipation of minorities. So first of all, I believe that political and legal changes are a consequence of social efforts to pursue changes by initiative of minorities themselves. According to this idea, I would like to start my Italian queer review from the recent past. The first Italian Pride was in 1994 and only 3,000 people participated. No political parties joined the event. The little number of people taking part in prides and the absence of institutions carried on till 1999. In 2000, International Lesbian and Gay Association decided to locate the World Pride in Rome during the Holy Year of the Jubilee of the Catholic Church. Pope St. John Paul II strongly opposed the organization of the Pride. But in the end, the Italian institution allowed the event, and 1 million people from around the world participated. From that day, the power of Italian queer groups and associations increased because of the larger social support. During all next Prides, hundreds of thousands of people took part. During the following years, many cities organized local prides in the same period as the national ones. So Archigay and other Italian queer associations decided to sponsor all organizing cities and reintitulate Onda Pride this sequence of events. In 2019, the last year before COVID-19, 38 different Italian cities organized their prides, often with the support of different local institutions, like regional governors, mayors, rector rectors of universities, political parties, members of the parliament, or members of the government. In 2016, a big manifestation took part all over Italy. It was called Sveglia Italia, Wake Up Italy, to support the project of law about civil unions. In 2020 and 2021, because of the COVID-19 emergency, prices were cancelled and strongly reduced. And during this year, there were a huge online support for DDL Zang, a project of law against discriminations. An important sign of solidarity was writing DDL Zang on one's hand and posting it on social media, like in this photo. This is a photo posted for the 17th of May in the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia. The current state of queer rights. So, in 2016, the Italian Senator Monica Cirinna promoted a law about same-sex unions. It was the very first Italian regulation for homosexual people. This law was approved by the Italian Parliament, but no more rights regarding partnership were recognized, like stepchild adoption or ordinary adoption. It was considered as well an important goal for the Italian queer community. Last year, the House of Deputies approved a project of law promoted by the member of the Italian Parliament Alessandro Zan, known in Italy as DDL Zan. It concerns criminal rules against violence and discrimination based on sex, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, and disability. This year, during the celebrations for Workers' Day, the Italian singer Fedez endorsed DDL Zan during the concert for the 1st of May. This event was transmitted by RAI, the Italian national television. Later, the singer posted on social media all RAI indication, RAI, Italian national television indications provided to him to avoid any political speech regarding DDL Zan during the concert. And for this reason, RAI was charged with limitation of freedom by many members of the Italian Parliament. And the trial between Fedez and RAI is still going on. Last June, the Vatican Minister for Foreign Countries, Paul Richard Gallagher, declared that, according to Catholic Church, DDL Zan represents a violation of the agreement between the Church and Italy. This declaration was announced before the final approval of the law by the Italian Parliament. The Senate, the Italian Senate, is still carrying on the discussion about DDL Zan, and the final votation will be probably in autumn. So, how Volt is involved in facilitated change, Volt Italy. About the DDL Zan, we organized a debate with Alessandro Zan himself and about possible improvements regarding the law. And we organized as well a discussion with queer Italian associations. We are trying an agreement with other political parties involved in the approval of the law, and we provide political communication support and political events support. The other queer issues for the future, according to Volt Italia, are same-sex marriage, stepchild adoption and ordinary adoption for queer people, an open discussion about surrogacy, inside Volt and outside Volt, legal and social worship for intersex people and for non-binary people, HIV prevention, care and cure, educational and school intervention, and the revision of the agreement between the Church and Italy. So, this is my presentation, 2 photos from Venice and Rome. These are social media contacts, and yes, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Wonderful presentation, and I really wish a lot of success to the DDLZ, and hopefully it gets through without any hitches. But thanks so much for showing us really how Volt, even if we don't have perhaps elected officials, that we can still do quite a lot to push the political agenda forward, and to particularly when it comes to equality. So a huge thank you for giving us that contribution. We're not going to go very far. We're going to just kind of switch over to the other side of the bay and talk to our Spanish friends, who are going to tell us a little bit more about what's happening in Spain, which is also one of the countries which used to be very much at the forefront of LGBTIAQ+ rights, and hopefully is still staying there. But as you've heard, perhaps from the Netherlands, they're trying to make sure that they stay ahead. So hopefully we have actually a competition across European countries to go up in terms of rights, rather than to go down. But you'll tell me if I'm right. Welcome.
It would be great. It would be great. Hello, Kim. Hello, everyone. And thank you for organizing. Let me share my screen first about the presentation that we prepared, because otherwise I'm not a super techie person. So I may need some help. It's here. Is it fine? Yeah. Okay. So thank you again, and thank you for organizing, everyone, and let me have the opportunity to be here. And so I'm gonna introduce myself also. I'm David Rodriguez, from, also known as Comino, from Volt Spain. I'm coming from the Barcelona team, and I'm also part of the LGBTQ community, and also inside the team of feminism and diversity in Volt Spain, that we will talk later on. And I'm an economist, and I'm currently actually living in Brazil and studying human rights and global democracy. And here's my Twitter if you want to follow me. And I'm here to talk about the 2021 review on the LGBTQI community in rights and the situation of the community in Spain. And I would like to start off with some sad news, actually, because attacks on even if we're talking that Spain is a kind of a paradise as the Netherlands for the LGBTQI community, there's still a lot of things to do and a lot of fight that we have on the forefront. And sadly, the attacks on the LGBTQI community continue despite the pandemic. Inclusively, we have experienced a comparative increase since 2019, which is actually really worrying. And relating to hate crimes in Spain, racist and xenophobic attacks are on the top of the list of the reported hate crimes, followed by anti-Semitic ones and crimes related with trans or queer people. And I would like also to talk about the rise of misinformation and the rise of misinformation in our country, which is it is a worrying issue that we are facing. And we are often seeing a lot of fake news and that misrepresent or assume the nationality or origin of a criminal, such as a rapist, for example. So this leads indirectly to a perpetuation of racist stereotypes, which not only incite attitudes of suspicion towards ethnic minorities, but it also affects to these people and to their credibility when they are actually reporting some of these crimes, which is actually like as I said before, really worrying, because we've seen like a variety of different people who face a lot of problems with the reporting on with the authorities. And actually, this low reporting rate in Spain, it's something that comes from the fact that there is a low degree of confidence towards authorities. So it ends up with a low reporting rate, considering 10 to 15% of the cases to be reported, actually really low. And it ends up for us to consider that the real number of victims and of hate crimes is even higher than what we know. So it's actually really worrying. And for example, recently, the murder of Samuel, and Brazilian guy, a young Brazilian guy from Galicia, from the north of Spain, and part of the LGBTQI community, caught attention by the media and brought hate crimes into the political agenda again, which is actually what I'm gonna speak right after. And the thing is that we see from Volt Spain, we see a correlation between that increase of the hate speech, which has also a political legitimization. So the thing is that the increase in these hate crimes has gone hand in hand with the increase in the hate speech, in part from the extremism that we have in Spain, represented by Vox. I don't know if you people know about this party, but it's a kind of a Chega in Portugal, AFD in Germany. So it was a problem at the beginning for us, because our party was also called Vox, and we needed to change it because of them. So they are still representing a problem in Spain, and not only for Volt and not only for the name. And this is actually really worrying, because their proposals are not really distant from the ones in Hungary, or the Hungarian bill from Orban's. It's they call it the PIN parental. It's a kind of parental PIN, so that the only thing they want to do is prohibit or make parents, give parents the right to choose if their children want to receive sex education and education on diversity. So it makes everything really complicated, as these kind of speeches are coming back, and they remind us a little bit of dark seasons and dark times in Spain, back to the dictatorship. I wanted also to talk about the last regulations. Let me have a minute, because I'm lost on my papers. And so I wanted to talk also about the last regulations that have been implemented in Spain, or trying to be implemented in Spain, regarding LGBTQI rights. And this last regulation has been like a kind of controversial, because it's been presented in the parliament, it's been rejected, and then it's been passed again, but right now it needs to have the approval. And it's about all the trans right, the trans bill on Spain. We have already a bill from 2007, which is actually not really adapted to the needs of the LGBTQI community, and especially the needs of trans people and transgender people. So in May of 2021, I think there is a mistake on this slide. It was this year, in May 2021, the Spanish parliament actually rejected a bill that would have allowed legal recognition based on self and gender self-determination. And after a long way of this bill to be arriving in the parliament, it was rejected. And finally, after a lot of protests in the streets, supported by obviously by Volt Spain and by almost all part of the LGBTQ community in Spain, the Spanish government decided to implement it again. It was a kind of kind of an enhancement from the past bill, but we need to have a look on it because it needs to go still to the parliament and get approved, and we think it's not enough. Our commitment with the trans community and with the LGBT community, it's big enough not to recognize a lot of rights that are being forgotten on this bill. And some of them, for example, this bill is so important because it actually recognizes gender self-determination, but it leaves out a lot. Well, let me go back to the principal features of the law. And actually, the bill is very important, as I said, because it introduces the concept of gender self-determination. This is the first point. The second point, it is very also important because it allows people, for trans people, especially, the no need for a medical treatment, psychological one, a psychological attendance or hormonization, which was compulsory under the bill that we have right now. And so it leads to the depathologization that we are actually fighting for from Volt, and that the World Health Organization is recommending together with the European Commission. So we think it goes into the right path, but it's not enough. It's not enough because even if it facilitates the change of gender recognition on ID, passports, and legally changing name, it leaves out a lot of part of the Spanish population, which is minors. They are completely left out, and they don't recognize non-binary identities, which is actually a big problem for this part of the community. And the most shocking part, I think, for the Volt community is that it completely excludes foreign people. So migrants are out of this law, out of this bill, and they are not recognized at all. So it actually makes us think that we are on the right path, but we are not on the basis of what we want for trans people and for the rest of the LGBTQ community, which is a recognition and same rights. So, for example, this law was also combined after a long debate with it's not exclusive for trans people. It also contains some parts that include the LGBT community, but for example, it approaches to the needs of our community, but it does it in a general way, so that we don't go deep into the point of our problems, of our needs, and so we don't get the solutions we need and we deserve. So we think from Volt Spain that it is necessary to pursue a specifically targeted legislation that addresses trans people to solve their situation. Sometimes I can, for example, drop some data here which are really shocking, even if we say, even if we know that Spain is a kind of a really advanced country in which concerns to this to the LGBT community. But for example, 80% of trans women are unemployed in Spain. And we cannot think this is not due to a structural system that we just say, hey, this is like that, and this happens because people, they can actually legally change their name, so everything is solved. We need a lot of things to do. And going back to the panel that we have had the fortune to see today, we need more education, and we need more and more training and more of raising awareness to see to see those changes implemented, because at the end we have obviously these legal changes, but at the end we need to see them implemented and executed in the real life. No, when we talk about equality, we're not talking about only about legislation and regulation. We are talking about real changes that affect real people, and this is not what the trans and the rest of the LGBT community are transmitting us. No, I think one thing that is really important for us in Volt Spain, and I think in the rest of Volt Europe, is that we can hear people, and that we want to have the major comprehension from what is happening and what the real needs are. And so I also wanted to talk about what are we doing right now, because as I said before, the murdering of Samuel, this Brazilian guy, this Spanish Brazilian guy, was really shocking for the whole LGBT community, and attacks keep on appearing every day against two men, two women, intersex people, and everyone who belong to the community. And so we actually created a group because the COVID pandemic has created a lot of resistance to go and protest into the streets, even if we have participated in some of them. Following Samuel's murder, we did like a little experiment on the social media. And so we asked our followers on Instagram and Twitter to tell us about the attacks that they have maybe experienced during their whole lives, including if they had reported or not to the police or to the authorities. And conclusions were disheartening, were terrible. I mean, we obviously know we are part of the community. We know we are not safe. We are not 100% safe. So we knew that, but we are really surprised by the amount of young people who have told us, who have experienced aggressions, attacks, discriminations, within their families, within their workplaces, within schools, which are really worrying, right? So after that, and going back to the bill that we are considering, that right now is going to be discussed in the Spanish National Parliament, we consider, for example, that on the case of conversion therapies, for example, this law contains the banning out of these kind of measures, of this kind of abuses. Let's talk clearly of this kind of abuses, but they don't prosecute them. So at the end, you see, like we are doing some steps. We are building a stronger community. We are having like a basis for our regulation, but it's not enough. It's not completely enough. We need more, and we need more protection, and we need more, and we need to have a stop on these hate speeches, as for example, within the concept of gender self-determination, there was created even a debate inside the feminist movement. And at the beginning, it thought it was like, oh, maybe it's like 3-4 people saying these kind of things. But at the end, you see, it's like a lot of people who have like a lot of misinformation, and that kind of try to put a controversial attitude towards this law, as they say that gender self-determination can blur women as a political subject. So it makes us think like it's a kind of I don't even like to repeat this saying, because, you know, like we need to stop this kind of speeches, but I think it's gone too far that we cannot even like stop to just to put our voices up and say, hey, this is not like this. Like trans women and cisgender women deserve both same rights, and actually women, to be a woman is not to be a part of a minority. So we need to understand that trans community is a minority community, same as the LGBT community, and so they need to be protected. We need to be protected because as we have seen from the past, our lives also matter, and we need to protect them with education, with more training. Otherwise, we cannot be free. So that's all I wanted to talk about Spain. We are right now creating this group of feminism and diversity. It's a kind of task force that we want to work together with the rest of the teams in Europe. And actually, I wanted to end up saying that that obviously I wish we could all of the countries compete to have like same rights and for equality, and to see like, hey, who's the one who is more equal, you know, because at the end it's gonna be like, you know, like kind of the vaccine work. So who's gonna get vaccinated first? So who's gonna get freedom and safety first in Europe? And I think this is an important matter, and because we don't live in paradises. Spain is not a paradise. There is a fight, and there is an enormous fight still that we need to face, and we are here to do it. So just join us.
Thanks, David, for that wonderful update from Spain. Very comprehensive also. So it's really interesting to hear from you. I think indeed what you've been mentioning in terms of the day-to-day discrimination and day-to-day hatred that people experience is really important. I think it really has to color political debates, because very often we get lost in the system and we forget that there are individuals that really are affected by this. And there are some really great reports from the Fundamental Rights Agency, which really highlights this stuff. So if you're looking to see kind of how the Volt Spain experience compares to other European countries, there's definitely research that's being done on this to really capture the extent by which minority groups, not just the LGBTIAQ plus community, but indeed all of the diversity groups, the amount of violence that they experience day in and day out is quite shocking, and really highlights how much work remains to be done across Europe.
Exactly like that.
Thanks again for being here. This concludes our panorama, our State of the Union from many different countries. And of course, there are lots of Volt chapters which haven't been able to speak today, but would have loved to, and also would have been sharing very similar stories, really highlighting the pan-European dimension of this as well. So, you know, we've had a really very rich and comprehensive Volt Pride. We've had a panel debate which really opened up the space and the discussion in terms of all the different topics which are affecting the queer community. We had the country reports. We had our candidates speaking about how important these issues are for Volt and what they're going to do to contribute once they're elected, hopefully. But of course, Pride isn't just about the politics, it's also about other things. And actually one of the places where we express our queerness the best is also in sports. And so we have a wonderful video highlighting how we celebrate Pride, not just in politics, but also by doing some very physical things. And considering COVID and considering the fact that we're always behind our screens, this one's going to be great for us to really inspire us to get out and do something. So Tech Wizards, the floor is yours. Kind of show us the video.
On June 27th, 2021, Volt Europe hosted its first official Pride Run, a statement for human rights all over Europe. Love is love, and love is a human right. Showing support for a community that had been neglected and oppressed for many years. Showing color, respect, and support was a special interest of all of the participants. We wanted to show we not only talk the talk, but walk the walk and run the run. We were blessed with the best of weather, pure sunshine, and pure joy. So here are some of our footages that we've collected for you to enjoy. After our run, many cities had a little get-together and enjoyed the company of each other, celebrating the common cause. Thank you so much to all chapters and all city teams taking part in this year's 2021 Pride Run.
What a great little video that was. And I just want to say a huge thanks to Miko, who was the mastermind behind that initiative, to really bring all of the Volt chapters together in common purpose. And as you can see, we definitely sweated a bit as well in order to celebrate Pride around Europe. For Volt, the topic of diversity and inclusion, equality and equity around Europe is a really important issue for us. It is something which really is part of our DNA. It is something which for us as a political party is something where we feel is it's not just important for individuals, it's important as a movement to really be supportive of these issues. And that is why I'm really proud and really pleased to have joining us some members of our leadership who are here to convey that message and to again explain why this is so important to Volt. So I wanted to just say a huge thanks to Anouk for spending some time. I know that running a political movement is a full-time job, so you being able to take some time away to join us for the Volt Pride is really appreciated. And I believe that you have some, hopefully, well, I'm sure they will be, inspiring words for all of us to conclude what has been an amazing journey across Europe, celebrating Pride and being proud of who we are.
Cool. Thank you, Kim, for those very kind words, putting the bar high. Yeah, thank you for inviting me for these closing remarks of this amazing event. And of course, I would make time for that because I think it's really important. It's an absolute honor to see such amazing speakers. And I believe it's an opportunity to hear different voices, see different perspectives, and actually listen to each other and engage. I've really enjoyed the panel discussion. It was great to meet the candidates who are here to raise our voices and spread the word. We even had beautiful music, and how cool is it to see so many countries participate in this World Pride event. When I was asked to give the closing remarks, I had to say I doubted if I was the right person, because I myself am not part of the LGBTIQ community. And so why am I here then to give the closing remarks? And then I thought, well, the theme is building bridges. And that is something that I think is really, really important and that we all have a role to play in. And that's something that I do as a General Secretary for Volt Europa, but also in my personal life and as a person as a whole, because I think only together we can overcome challenges and we can build bridges. Before I will share more about that, I wanted to share a little bit also of my own journey and how I make mistakes and how it's important to see how we can learn from those mistakes. So if we acknowledge that, we can grow and to become better persons as a whole and accepting each other. So when I joined as General Secretary, one of the first meetings I had was someone who shared that they were preferred to be pronounced as she and her. And at that time, I had no idea why. And I actually found myself looking into the camera to see why was it necessary to say that. And while I was realizing that I did that, I had it made me realize that actually, while I don't think it's important and why I didn't see it as important at that moment, it still triggered something in my head, being distracted. And I realized at that point that actually, if I really don't care, it shouldn't even distract me at all. And I should actually accept it and acknowledge it and give the person who needed to say this the freedom to say it. And I think this is something that most of us, not being part of the LGBTIQ community, find ourselves having, not specifically with this example, but it's an example of how new things come to us and we don't know why, and yet we judge upon it, even without really wanting to judge it. And that's why I think it's important to understand why, to give space, and to show empathy. And what I did is really find out why it was necessary. And actually now I find it very normal if it's us or if someone else says it. And I realized how privileged I am as a cisgender, that I don't feel the need to say it, but I should own and acknowledge it for others to be there. And actually only when you do that, you're really embracing a person as a whole and being welcoming. So that's something that I have with myself, these little debates with myself. Catching myself in an assumption or an unconscious bias and trying to make it more conscious. And that is the thing that I think I would wish for everyone. Because only when you are aware that you have this assumption or this bias, only then you can challenge yourself and have a pretty good debate with yourself, like I did with why this would bother me at all. So how do we build these bridges? So I believe the challenges that we find in society today, especially when it comes to discrimination, they are really rooted in unawareness and a lack of empathy. People are quick to judge others that are different from themselves, and most of the time we are not aware that we do that. Our brains are wired in a way that in a split second, everyone we meet, we have an opinion. It's either good or bad. And then we tend to fool ourselves that this is the truth. Yet the beauty in life is actually to stay curious and to really see, hey, who is this person? And am I actually judging a person, or am I open to listen to each other? So knowing that our brain is wired this way, what we really need to do is every 5 minutes in the first time we meet people to challenge ourselves and to have a good debate internally to actually see, hey, is this someone who looks like me and who acts like me or has the same ideas? Then you probably will put them in a category, I like them. If they don't, you probably feel uncomfortable and don't know what to do with it. Those 5 minutes, if you challenge yourself not to judge about that and really stay open, then you become more curious and you actually see the person that you meet. And that's something that I try to do within Volt, but also in my work next site to Volt, where I give workshops on how to overcome our unconscious biases. Because actually, I think this is the biggest step that we all should make, to acknowledge that we all do this and to realize that when we don't consciously include people, you will unconsciously exclude people. Within Volt, I find it sometimes hard to see that some people from a different background, they come to Volt thinking that we have a very inclusive environment and they feel disappointed when it's not. And that's something that goes to my heart and something that I really want to take care of in a good way and ensure an inclusive environment. At the same time, I think it's also very important to acknowledge that we all still have a lot to do. In the panel discussion, it was mentioned several times that it's so important to have role models and to really have people speaking on behalf of the LGBTIQ community to make sure that their voices are heard and to own it and to be proud of it. At the same time, people from outside the LGBTIQ community, we should be educated in becoming more aware of how it is, how we can interact in a good way so we don't unintentionally and unconsciously offend each other. And only then, when we both do the work, we can become an inclusive society, and something that I want to push for within Volt. There might be already LGBTIQ rights in every country, but being fully accepted for who you are, unfortunately, is not. And that's something that I wish for everyone. The more this is shared, the more we can learn from each other and the more we grow towards each other. So the more people you know from different backgrounds, the more you will see the persons behind it rather than the labels you can put on them. And that's why I think we should do all of that, because at the end of the day, we are all human and we all want a place to belong. We all have had at some points in our lives that we felt awkward or excluded or judged. And I really welcome you all to think back of those experiences that it happened to you in your life and think of what you needed actually to help you get out of that awkward situation and actually invite you to be that for the next person that is in such a situation. One of my favorite quotes when it comes down to diversity and inclusion is, diversity is being asked to the party, but inclusion is being asked to dance. So let's celebrate that we are different, acknowledge that we are by being open and curious to each other, to see how we can empower each other to be who we are and to love who we want to love. Thank you for this amazing event, for everyone that organized it and participating in the World Pride. We are all looking forward to support, to build the bridges together in an inclusive society.
Thank you, Anouk, and I look forward to dancing with you.
Yes.
I hope that everyone really takes what Anouk has said to heart, because I think it's really, it's great life advice. I think we all can benefit from doing that. I want to bring back somebody very special who's really made the Volt Pride that you're seeing, that you've witnessed for the last few hours, possible, and that's Connie. But I believe that behind Connie, there's also been an amazing team. That's not just I believe, I know that there's an amazing team that has been working together, working their asses off to make this happen. And I hope that you've all found it a smooth and exciting, inspiring experience. But Connie, I believe the time is almost upon us to close this amazing event, but I want to give you the chance to say a few final words before we do that.
Very true. That was very moving statement by General Secretary Anouk Ooms. I was very moved by her words. I thought that was really, really good to see and hear from her. We talked about topics. We talked about politics and how what we can do to change. Of course, going on in several countries. Vote for elections, and there will be further elections coming up in the next years. France, for example, so build these bridges. Yeah, made come to. It was an idea to across online.
Apologies, everyone. It seems that we have slight connection issues, so I'll just take over and just want to say on behalf of the organizing team, a huge thank you for spending the time with us, for listening to the panel sessions, for listening to our candidates, and for listening to the contributions that each of our chapters is making in their countries. I have to say that as a former secretary of the LGBT intergroup, I have seen firsthand the contribution that Europe can make to making LGBTIAQ plus rights a reality across Europe and indeed well beyond. And it's really through political action that we make a difference for refugees who need to reach our borders because they are being persecuted in their own countries outside the EU. That we make a difference by having laws which prohibit discrimination in employment, in the places where we go to enjoy a social drink, in accommodation. All of these things are super important, and the only way that we make a difference is by being united and by using our pan-European experience to make sure that the voice of equality and the voice of freedom shouts loudly when it is being aggressed. So it's a huge opportunity, and I hope that those of you who perhaps are listening to this and saying, is Volt the party for me? I hope that the contribution that we've made today highlights how passionate we are about making Volt a space and a political movement that truly supports the LGBTIAQ plus movement and LGBTIAQ plus peoples, and that we're here to really make your voice empowered and reaching the top levels of halls of power. So I hope that you have been left inspired and that you will join us on the Discord channel where we're going to have an after party. But Connie, I don't know if your connection is a little bit better. Do you want to say any final words before we break off?
Yeah, very quickly, just as you can see, sometimes things we're not connected, we drop out, we are not included, and then as you can see that Kim so beautifully crossed that divide and made sure that that you're not left hanging. So that's also something we definitely believe in. So thank you for having me again. Just very shortly, I really want to send out a very big thanks to everyone involved, especially the tech team that has made this this entire stream happening, the organizational team who have moved everything and then some to make all of it happen, the wonderful panelists, everyone who was able to present, and everybody who helped with the presentations, and of course Kim, who has been doing an exceptional job moderating the Volt Pride 2021. So of course, you already mentioned we have an after party on Discord. It would be really cool to see you there, to hang out, to answer maybe a couple of questions. If you can't join the Discord or have something else going on, that's fine. You can still ask questions and interact with us, of course, on the Volt Europa accounts, but as well with the hashtag Volt Pride 2021. So we'll see that. We'll be able to answer. That will be very cool. And I guess that's it. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining and for making Volt Pride 2021 the cool, really cool, awesome party that it was.
Congratulations, Connie. Happy Volt Pride, happy World Pride, and let's go and have a nice party, because that's what Pride is all about as well.
That's true. Yes. Thank you.